We will now call this meeting to order. If we could pay attention to Councilman Cohen to make the introduction of the individual making the invocation, to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. David is married to Amy. He's a father to a daughter and a son, and he's one of the pastors at Fellowship Bible Church. I'd like to welcome David Hinkle.
If we could all rise if you're able.
Would you please pray with me? Heavenly Father, we recognize that you are God and we are not. And Lord, we are dependent on you for every breath and the decisions that we make. So Lord, we pray that you would be pleased with how we conduct ourselves. Lord, I pray that you would continue to build up consensus and unity among the leadership of our city. Lord, I thank you for Madam Mayor and the members of each council represented here. Lord, we ask your blessing on them and on their families and for their sacrifice of time and energy away from their normal responsibilities, or abnormal, as the case may be. But Father, you love this city and its citizens deeper than we do. And we are absolutely dependent on your wisdom and your insight. And so, Lord, we ask that you would supply that. And God, we ask for the recruitment and the retainment of young talent for this city. And Lord, we ask that you would build marriages and reduce divorce, that you would build safe streets and reduce crime. Lord, we need your help. We are dependent on you fully. And God, it is so good knowing that you are for us. You love us. You want what is best for us. And so, Lord, we can take heart that regardless of the issues that lie ahead or that we face presently, we are not alone. You are with us, and you are providing in ways perhaps even yet unseen. So, Lord, we trust you. We thank you for your goodness to us and to our city. We ask your blessing on this evening and on the agenda items tonight. And we just thank you for the grace that is shown to us through your Son, Jesus Christ. And in his holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight, it's great when technology cooperates. There you go. Yield little patience. So tonight, we're going to start the council meeting in a pretty unorthodox way. One of the things that I have made sure that I carry forward in my tenure as mayor is celebrating the treasures that we have in our community. This weekend, I was able to participate in an event that celebrated activism as a form of speaking out with art. And part of that was having live poetry read and opera. How many of you knew that in the city of Topeka we had opera? Yeah, so, well, some of you did. You're in the minority. So I would like to invite here Dr. Gaetano. She comes to us from New York. She is a PhD that teaches opera right in our backyard. We have an amazing program here, and I have asked her to start us off by just singing a small little aria and then telling you what's happening this next weekend. Thank you, Mayor.
very brief excerpt, but I have to make it clear I am here representing what the pastor invoked in his opening message, the young talent of this area. It is my absolute pleasure to guide and guard them as they move through the process of becoming professional singers and professional vocal music educators. Okay, we have a great stewardship in my department of young talent and making sure that they get wonderful opportunities. And I'm very pleased to be the director of the Opera Studio at Washburn University. We do have an upcoming performance on April 20th and 21st. It's entitled A Handel Project, and it features arias of Handel. He was a composer of German birth who wrote Italian-style opera and lived in London. So a lot to keep track of. We have a wonderful group of talented young singers and musicians in the department, and I'm really pleased to be part of it. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
We now proceed to proclamations. If I could have Gail Kozak come up. We are raising awareness to Child Abuse Prevention Month. I'll read a piece of our proclamation that states that whereas providing safe, stable, and nurturing relationships for our children, free of violence, abuse, and neglect, we can ensure that Kansas children will grow to their full potential as the next generation of leaders, helping to secure the future of this state and nation. So, I, Michelle de la Isla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, Kansas, do by declare April 2018 as Child Abuse Prevention Month.
I just want to thank the city for supporting us in our work. It's just incredible, the partnerships that we have with you on many levels and how we are able to work together to really improve lives for the children in our community who really are our future. And so that's why this is important. And while we work year-round to prevent child abuse and raise awareness about the importance of that, it's nice to have a month where we can really kind of focus on that. So thank you very much. And I just passed out pinwheels. If you haven't seen some of them in the city, please take a look for our gardens because they are the national symbol for Child Abuse Prevention Month. And I'm going to give you one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Would you like that? All right.
Thank you. It is now my pleasure to invite my good friends Chris Burke and Teresa to come up. And we also have Ashton Veazey, and they are all representatives of Councilwoman Hiller's and my old stomping grounds, Housing and Credit Counseling. And we have a proclamation about Fair Housing Month. The last piece of this proclamation states, Topekans recognize that discrimination has no name or home here or anywhere in America. The City of Topeka supports fair housing efforts to eliminate discrimination and the opportunity to live in safe, affordable housing. And in order to heighten public awareness, the City of Topeka wishes to focus public attention on the pursuit of ending discrimination and affirmatively furthering fair housing. Now, therefore, I, Michelle de la Isla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2018 Fair Housing Month.
Thank you, Mia.
Thank you.
I guess I'm the chosen one. Okay. So I just want to thank the city so much for their partnership with Housing and Credit Counseling over the years, both with the rental housing program, which Ashton and I represent, and the homebuyer program, the TOTO program, which Chris Burke represents. We really help so hundreds and hundreds of low-income renters every year, and we are so glad that we can do that for those people. And Chris does an excellent job with the TOTO program. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your service to the city. Finally, and certainly not least, our final proclamation for the evening, if Luca Wang could join us. As all of you know, as mayor, I've taken the task of working with the YWCA and many other organizations to establish a sexual and domestic violence task force. It is important to us to eradicate human trafficking and all forms of abuse in these areas. So it is with great pride that we also celebrate the month of April as being Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And it says here that whereas the statistics do not represent the true incidence and prevalence of sexual violence, reasons including not all victims report the crime to law enforcement. Sexual violence is also a tactic of domestic violence. So sexual violence may not be reported as the primary form of abuse and victimization, although the victim has experienced sexual violence along with any other kind of primary abuse. The State of Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence is a statewide organization working to prevent and eliminate sexual violence through training, collaboration on systems and procedures and policy, education, and awareness, and is located in Topeka. Now, therefore, I, Michelle de la Isla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2018 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, and thanks to you and the City Council. And I know we've worked with you a little bit in the past. It's the Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence. So we're a statewide organization. We are an organization and a coalition. So in our coalition, we have 27 programs that are across the state. And here in Topeka, it's the YWCA. We're really grateful and excited about the community coordinated response for domestic violence. And sexual violence is a part of domestic violence. It can be a tactic that abusers use within domestic violence. And the community coordinated response is kind of one way that it's really effective for communities to come together to reduce the amount of domestic violence that's happening and sexual violence that's happening in the community. So, and sexual violence is recognized as a public health, preventable, widespread public health problem. So, yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. We now proceed to presentations. Tonight, we're continuing the party and the celebration, and we are going to have a big reveal of what the future of the downtown plaza could look like. And we have several individuals signed up to speak about this today. The first person to speak up will be Pat Michaelis.
Thank you for having me. I'm very pleased and excited to be talking to you and telling you kind of the plaza story tonight. And I want you to know I'm just the warm-up act for the real show, so we're not going to start showing slides while I'm here. But I'm Pat Michaelis, and among other jobs, I am the chairman of the Downtown Topeka Foundation. The foundation is the developer of the plaza. We are very pleased to show you the plans for the plaza. I think we all know it's going to make a huge difference in the energy and excitement and just the activities in our downtown, joining other things that are going on, but it's going to be a major factor. So the foundation, we own the land. We are fundraising. We're developing plans, which you're going to see in here in a little bit. Eventually we'll hire a contractor and we'll make sure it's up and running. So that's what we're taking on. I look at us as developers. We're not going to be operators, though. I mean, that's someone else that knows what they're doing, and we'll be in charge of that. So the goal tonight is to tell you about the plans and the footprint. I mean, that's what we really want to, have you have a visual of what it's going to be like and the activities, and they'll be there. The cost, probably about $9.5 million. So, it's going to be a major improvement in the downtown area. We are currently fundraising. And I want you to know I believe it's achievable. It's not in the bank, but I believe it's achievable. All right. And I want to first off, thank the Topeka Lodging Association. You talk about someone that stepped up and has made an investment. I mean, obviously they want more heads in beds, you know, and so they see this as a way that that's going to happen. And I respect them. They're putting their money where their mouth is, and so a big shout out to the Lodging Association. This is going to be a place for all people. You know, this is for everyone. It will be free. I mean, it's not set up that there's ways to get in and out and tickets and charges and that sort of thing. So it'll be open to all and free. And I also want to mention thank you to the city and the staff and the council for your support, because I mean, I can tell you all are interested. We want this to happen, and it's collaborative. You know, it does take the village. Two speakers before me have talked about retaining good young talent, right? I mean, we can think of a lot of reasons that we're doing this. I mean, for the citizens that live here, you know, we want to all have some fun and a place to eat and a place to be entertained and meet and greet and that sort of thing. But this retention of talent is a key, all right? I have been told that there are over 1,000 jobs that are open in Topeka right now, okay? Maybe, probably more than that. So what economic development is kind of three legs of a stool. You want jobs, you've got to have a training, but you've got to have skilled workers. And that's where we're short. And they want a quality of life. So I just leave you with this before I introduce Kurt Young, who's going to present it, is that this is critical to our economic development efforts. The fact that we've got jobs, but they're not filled, doesn't really do us good, and it's hard to attract other companies to come when when they can't find skilled workers. This is a key component of that. So with that, I'm going to introduce Kurt Young. He is the he's kind of the man of the hour in the plaza, and you know, he's head of the Plaza Design Committee and executive director of the Topeka Lodging Association. So I just want to welcome him and thank him for all his efforts. So Kurt, turn it over to you.
Okay. Let me get this presentation up here. If I can find, there it is. I'm so excited I thought maybe I'd sing this presentation in opera form, okay?
As long as you dance.
It's more than an area, so, you know, we can't do that tonight. My name is Kurt Young. I serve as the executive director of the Topeka Lodging Association, and I'm currently chairing the design committee and effort for the downtown plaza. I've prepared a script that I'm going to stick pretty close to, because I could chase a lot of rabbits in this presentation, and I want to stay on focus just so we can get through it. And I'm going to ask for your indulgence and patience and save your questions to the end, because I'm going to cover a lot of ground in a very short period of time, and I may answer your questions before we're done with the presentation. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge some individuals that have helped us in this process. This is the design committee that has been working since last July to put together what you're going to see tonight, which will be our plaza. There's one name that's not on that list, and that's Kellen Seitz, and I want to recognize him as well as part of this effort. Without these folks, we've been meeting. In July last year, I told them we want to meet at 8 o'clock every Wednesday morning. And with a few exceptions where we've postponed or didn't need to meet, we have met at 8 o'clock every Wednesday morning. So that gives you an idea of the level of commitment that these folks have put into this. Just to recap, in 2017, the Downtown Topeka Foundation purchased all of the real estate from 612 to 634 South Kansas Avenue. Subsequently, an agreement was signed between the City of Topeka and the Downtown Topeka Foundation to develop the plaza on this real estate. The first significant step that took place in that process was actually completed by Visit Topeka a couple of years ago when they sent out a survey to over 2,300 recipients or responders in the city and county, asking them what they wanted to see in a plaza. What do you want? If we build a plaza, what do you want to see? And we had identified the top 5, 6, 7 things that came out of that survey, and you're going to see the fruits of that survey in what you see tonight in this presentation. What we will show tonight is the overall footprint of what it will look like. The site plan and renderings you will see here tonight have been approved by the Downtown Topeka Foundation Board of Directors, and we are here tonight to unveil those plans to you, and we will move forward from this point after tonight into the process of developing a full-blown set of construction plans and details to proceed into the construction phase of the project. The very end of what I have tonight, I'll talk about a timeline for all of that to happen. My intent in this exercise tonight is to take you for a walk through our plaza as it will exist and describe some of the key features that you'll see within that plaza. This is the site plan for that block that you were talking about on the east side of the 600 block of Kansas Avenue. We're going to begin on the very north end of the property, and north is at the top of this picture in the yellow box that you see there at the north end. That is the building 612. It currently is adjoined to 618. Those are the two red brick buildings. Visit Topeka is in one of those buildings. In 618, we have state employees in 612. One of the components of our plan is to enlarge this building by expanding it back out to the traditional storefront line as it was in the 1930s. So we're recognizing some of the historic aspects of the area and trying to bring this building back out to the original storefront. We will also extend it out on the back side towards the alley. That will accomplish not only some recognition of the historic significance, but it will also increase the square footage within the building and make it more leasable in terms of putting tenants in that building. It's a two-story building, and while we do not know exactly how this space will be utilized, the plan is for it to be retail that will ultimately support the plaza, i.e. a restaurant, something along that line. It will open directly to the south, and the frontage of the building will face to the south, out towards the plaza. Within the scope of that, there will be canopies that extend, or porticos, whatever you want to call them, coverings that come out from the front of the building or that are out towards the front of the building, that will be dining areas where and those canopies will have the ability to have heat within the top of the canopy, so they can be utilized during the colder weather months. There is approximately a 3-foot drop in elevation from the west side of the property, which is the Kansas Avenue side, to the easternmost side of the alley across the property. From a functional standpoint, it was important to level out the plaza by creating some steps and ramps down into the main part of the plaza. This change in elevation is a key element of the design and provides many opportunities that facilitate the overall design, and we're going to get into some of those things. One of the things that I want to point out, and it's hard for me to point, I have a pointer, but it doesn't do any good with so many different TVs up here. I wouldn't know which one to point at, so I'll do my best to tell you where it's at. In front of the building there at 612, and you'll see some blue lines there that represent a wall that actually is where the elevation changes. And the face of that wall will become a water feature with a cascading waterfall over a stone wall of some kind. That'll provide, some white noise, some ambiance for the atmosphere of the plaza. That's one of the features that is taking advantage of that change in elevation. I want to move now from that water feature at the top left of the picture that you see there and go just to the right a little bit. This is a view standing out at the corner of 7th and Kansas looking to the northeast. That's 612, the building that you see behind the trees there in the back end of that picture. What you see there in the corner to the right is a stage. This is a 50-foot wide by 28-foot deep performance stage, fully equipped with sound and lighting to accommodate most of the local events that we would have within the equipment that's provided. You'll notice there that we've got to support it. You don't really see it in that picture. It's more visible in some of the other pictures. The supporting structure that we're using to support that stage is complementary to the arches that go over Kansas Avenue. So there's some synergy there as well. The area, this arch, the platform that holds, or the structure that holds the stage up, I'll get it out in a minute. The structure that holds that stage up is manufactured or made in such a way that it'll be very easy for performers that have additional equipment, rigging that needs to be done to add speakers or to add lights or whatever. It'll be very receptive to add on sound and lighting for a large band that might come in. I'm going to go back to the site plan, and if you look to the right of the stage in the alley area, we have met with the city staff, and one of the things that they've told us that we can plan on, and we've had multiple meetings with your staff over the last 8 or 9 months, is that we can plan on using the alley as part of the plaza. We recognize that there's infrastructure underneath that alley, so the alley will have, and the alley will have to be kept open. I mean, we can't build anything in that space because we have to allow for emergency vehicles and things like that. But the alley is actually going to become part of the plaza proper. That area to the right of the stage in the alley is going to be the anticipated parking area for a tour bus, a tractor trailer that has to unload sound and lighting equipment or band equipment or whatever. That will be the staging area in that alley to the right of the stage. Then there is a ramp that comes up the back side of the stage there, parallels the building 612 for easy access to the stage from that alley area. So trying to move along here and not tie you up too long. One of the things that you'll see on the side of your parking garage, that we talked to the city, to your staff about this, they've given us permission. There's a small grass area between the edge of the alley and your city parking garage. On one side of that tower would be on the south side of the tower, we're going to build public restrooms, and on the north side of that tower will be a storage facility for furniture, fixtures, and equipment that need to be stored for the plaza or to support the plaza. It is not our intention for those restrooms to be to have the capacity to have a large, event, a major band of some kind. There will still be a need for porta potties located at strategic points throughout the avenue. As we walk down the alley side there on the east side, about midway through the plaza, you'll see a 30-foot digital screen. I call it a jumbotron, but it will have multiple uses, multiple capabilities. If there's a band that has video that goes along with their music, they can tie into that digital screen and play their video on that. One of my favorite examples is, Saturday afternoon college football. We intend to have, watch parties in the plaza where you come down, watch KU, K-State, Chiefs, Royals, whatever we can fit into the program. We'll have those watch parties on that digital screen in the plaza. I'm going to move to, I'm going to stay right there because I think this represents it fairly well. In the center of that diagram that you see there, you'll see kind of some rectangular shapes. That is the primary water feature for the plaza, right dead center in the plaza. A lot of thought was given. Our first, if you go back 9 months to some of our early renderings, we had that off to the north end. And it really helped fill that space in the center of the plaza, so it has something going in the center of the plaza all of the time. But that water feature, the intent is to have a programmed water feature that can be programmed to lights, to music. It will also, during the day, during the warmer months, provide a splash pad. It'll be constructed in such a way that it can provide a splash pad for young kids to play in and just get wet and have a ball, okay? The rectangular pieces that you see in that area are seating. They will be constructed of some material that will be heavy enough that it can't just be picked up and moved, but yet can be moved by equipment to make way for the wintertime use of ice skating. You see around the perimeter of that water feature area, you see a white line. That white line represents the boundaries of the ice skating rink that we'll put in the wintertime. That is what it will look like in the wintertime with the ice rink installed. Now, it is not our intention from a foundation perspective to start out by owning our own ice equipment. It is our intention. There are companies that do this for you, that we will contract with people to come in, set up the ice rink, probably from the mid-November time frame till mid-February, into February, somewhere along in there. One of the things that, let me go back to this slide. This is looking from basically across the street at Equity Bank's building down from an aerial perspective, looking again towards the stage, towards the northeast. And I want to move to the 7th Street area at this point, which is at the far right end of this picture where you see the two food trucks, the blue and orange food trucks there. We have had, in our discussions with the city and with our neighbors, we've had a lot of discussion about what to do with 7th Street. And city staff has been very agreeable to letting us utilize 7th Street in the plaza. We have no intentions of closing or attempting to permanently close 7th Street. We wouldn't be good neighbors if we did that. But we do intend to re-elevate, change the elevation on the street. From a finish standpoint, it will look just like the plaza surface. We have met with food truck vendors to determine what their needs are as far as hookups. And at the end of the day, we'll have electrical hookups built right into the plaza, much like you would have in an RV park, to where there will be no need for generators for the food trucks in the plaza area. The plan is to make provisions for at least 4 food trucks, 2 on each side of the street. And when you do that, with the trees that we have shown there, it creates a very spacious food court area in the middle of 7th Street. So while 7th Street will be open during the day, complete for traffic and parking on the side, if we have a major event and need to close 7th Street, we'll have the bollards that we can insert into sleeves or some type of bollard, something a little better than our water-filled plastic things that we're using now. So we'll be able to block it off and utilize 7th Street to actually incorporate into the plaza. I'm going to walk down the west side, the Kansas Avenue side of the plaza at this point, and I want to go to this picture here because this is a really key element to designing plazas. One of the things that we've learned out of all of this is that plazas should not have borders or boundaries, walls, anything to where you're here, you feel like you're out of the plaza, you're here, you feel like you're in the plaza. We want it to be an open, inviting area that just says, here I am. And you really see that when you look at this picture. Now understand that another key thing that I want to point out is I made reference earlier to the 1930s, what was there in the 1930s. HTK has done a masterful job of going back and getting pictures from the 1930s and actually trying to use some of the information that came out of that, what was there, to create this elevation change against what is now the front side of the plaza. There are those, I would say they're yellow, those yellow rectangular things that you see in a linear line down what would be the sidewalk there are actual impressions of where there was a storefront back in the 30s. I thought Chuck or Zach could probably explain that better than I do, but it just gives you an idea of the detail that has gone into trying to develop this plan. The last thing that I will probably, maybe not the last thing, the next thing I want to talk about is you'll see the sound and lighting towers in this picture. Those are just what the name would imply. They're sound and lighting, but they'll have speakers in them where music can be not only from the stage, but we can have the ability to have music in the plaza over that speaker system day long if we want to, anytime we want to. So those towers will continue to develop as we get into the design and construction process, and you'll see those towers take on more and more color from the street side banners that we use along Kansas Avenue that have the red, blue, and yellow, or green, blue, and yellow feathers in them. We'll continue to look for ways to introduce more color into these towers as we go farther into the process. Art is going to be a very key component of the plaza. We've identified strategic locations within the plaza where we will have art. We don't know what that will be yet. We're open to suggestions. We've had suggestions ranging from temporary art that can be displayed and eventually sold, to permanent art. So there's a lot of different possibilities of how we can incorporate art into this plaza. Finally, you've probably noticed, I think you can see it in this picture. I think there may be this one's a better. This is standing on the corner of 7th and Kansas, looking east down 7th Street. You can see the food trucks there in the right-hand side, but the thing that I want to point out on this slide is the Top City name. Committee talked a lot about this, and we've kind of decided that we want it to be called Top City. It can be Top City Plaza. It can be, there's a lot of things that you could do with that, but that's the branding, if you will, that we have identified to associate with the plaza. Let me see what else we've got. This is a kind of a ground level. I think I showed you that earlier. This is out on Kansas Avenue in the front of 612 looking towards the stage. You see the porticos that I was talking about earlier. And then to your right, where you see that Top City, just to the right of that is where the water feature, wall-type water features will be. I think that's the last picture. Briefly, I want to talk about the timeline. You know, we finally got to a point where we said we either have to fish or cut bait. And we set a timeline for the completion of the plaza. In, I believe it was November, somewhere along in that time frame, I got to travel to Hutchinson with Brett and the folks from Visit Topeka to participate in the Kansas Kids Wrestling bid, which we seem to do every 5 years. And you've already heard, we won it again for another 5 years. And I had the opportunity to mention to the board of directors of Kansas Kids that day, that Sunday afternoon, that we were going to have a plaza for them at some point in time. Well, their first year of their new contract is 2019, and we can't make it by 2019. So we've set a date of March of 2020 to have the plaza open and running. Now, if you do the math and work backwards from that, we have a 9 to 12 month construction window. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that we need to start construction in January of 2019. So that's kind of the timetable you got to have a target, and that's what we're shooting for. So that pretty well, I know I've taken longer than I probably should have. I have one little cleanup piece of business that's related but not related. I've been working with the staff to come back in May, early May, to present the TBID Budget and Services Report. I was asked if I could combine that with this effort tonight. I have. At 9 o'clock this morning, the TBID Advisory Committee met and approved the 2019 TBID budget. And I have given copies to the clerk here, and she will pass those out, so you will each have one of those. So we've increased the amount of money allocated for the foundation in the 2019 budget to continue to put our best foot forward in helping to finance this effort. So having said all of that, I know I've gone through this in a hurry. We've got the architects, both Chuck and Zach are here. Pat's here, Vince is here, and I'm here, and we'll stand for any questions that you may have.
Kurt, this is very exciting, and for those of you who are new on the council, one of the things that made this project so exciting to us is the fact that the lodging community has self-assessed a tax to maintain this facility and ensure that we have programming. This is a true example of public-private partnership, and I am very appreciative of all the work that you have done as a volunteer to ensure the success of this project. At this point in time, I would like to see if anybody has any comments. Deputy Mayor Jensen.
Thank you. First of all, wow, this is an incredible vision of what this could turn into. I'm very excited to see this, and that schedule, while aggressive, I think is totally achievable given what we've done in our community and the incredible renaissance we're going through now. So very excited to see this come to fruition. My quick question for you all is the mechanical systems for the ice rink, are those permanent or will those be brought in every year?
They will be brought in. We will provide and build into the design, into the plaza, the infrastructure below grade to accommodate whatever is needed to put in temporary ice. And then we will contract with a provider, with a vendor, to actually bring in the portable ice equipment. It's a pretty common practice in today's world to put in portable ice.
Yeah, I've seen them thrown up just for a single weekend. So they're pretty aggressive at doing that. Does that require any, traditionally you have a quote unquote changing area for ice skating with lockers and that sort of thing. Is that part of that then?
We've not made any provisions. I think the expectation is that most people will be coming in and renting skates and putting their skates on and going skating. I don't see, we haven't, I suppose there could be some provision for that in the restroom.
Well, I'm thinking more of like lockers for people to put their shoes in.
No, we have not made any provisions for that.
Okay. All right.
Councilwoman Claire.
Will the restrooms be locked, like unless there's an event, or are they going to be open all the time?
That's an operational question, Councilwoman Claire, that we're in the midst right now. I'm chairing another effort to fine tune the operating budget. We're in just getting into the operation issues. So that I'm going to defer that question. I'll answer that one for you in 5 or 6 months when we've gotten through the operational. One of the things I do want to point out, the site plan that you saw here tonight and the renderings that you've seen don't have any furniture, fixtures, or equipment. Okay, there's going to be tables, there's going to be chairs, there's going to be places for people to sit. So there's going to be a lot of stuff out there that doesn't need to be shown for what we were wanting to accomplish tonight.
Councilman Padilla.
Thank you for your presentation. It's very impressive. I want to ask the question, looking at some of your renderings, about considering in the design those things that I'm familiar with that are called crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED. You must be familiar with it. And I'm looking at the openness of it, and then that's my concern, so that it can be clearly observable by law enforcement.
Yes.
And the lighting that would be there and put in place, not only just during operational hours, but after hours, so that way it doesn't invite people to come in when everybody's gone.
Yes. We have, to answer your question, we have met with the police department, with the CEP, and we've talked to CPTED with those folks. We had a meeting, the gentleman's name escapes me now, but we have talked about the security cameras and, the ability to provide security, but we've been working very closely with the police department on that, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the body? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say kudos. It's so exciting to see this come down, and I got a chance for a preview, and my wheels started to turn about what people could do on the ice, what we could do in the plaza. For those who weren't on the council at the time, the Downtown Foundation and the Lodging Association already has a calendar, or a tentative calendar, of what the different events could be all year long. There was a goal of at least 250 some days, and so I think it would be good to share those sometime soon so people can kind of have a vision of what you had in mind too. They stepped up very early with that. And one special request that's way ahead of time, but for me, who love the ice, make sure that whoever your vendor is has a cool Zamboni driver.
Cool Zamboni driver.
Gotta have a cool Zamboni guy.
Did you get that, Pat?
Thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing no further comments, thank you so much, Kurt, for all of your work, and thank you for every one of you that are here supporting this project, and for all of your contributions to our community. Before we move forward with the roll call, I would like to recognize in the back, if you see, there's some distinguished gentlemen. They are the Cub Scout Den Pack 175 of Webelos, and they are attending our city council meeting. Could you guys please stand up so that we could recognize you? Thank you very much. Hope you enjoy the meeting. All right, we now proceed with a roll call.
Councilmember Hiller. Here. Clear. Here. Ortiz. Here. Emerson.
Here.
Padilla.
Here.
Jensen.
Present.
Mays.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
Lester.
Here.
And Mayor De La Isla.
Here. Number 4 is appointments. We seem to have none. Number 5, consent agenda, if the clerk would read.
A is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Sylvia Ortiz granting Gerald Fisher an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 et seq. Concerning noise prohibitions. B is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Sandra Clear approving a special event known as the Sacred Heart St. Joseph Parish German Fest 2018. C is minutes of the regular meeting of April 3rd, 2018, and there are no applications this evening.
What is the pleasure of the body? Deputy Mayor?
Move to approve.
Deputy Mayor moves to approve. Councilwoman Clear seconds. There's no comments. We proceed with the vote.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes.
You didn't vote.
Could we, do you want to revote?
Move on.
We now proceed to action items, if the clerk would read.
A is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout regarding an appeal to the Kansas Appellate Courts in the matter of DWA GFYS Manufacturing Incorporated, doing business as the Vape Bar Topeka and Puffs and Stuffs LLC versus City of Topeka, Kansas.
Thank you, Clerk. At this point in time, City Manager and I had a conversation with regards how to introduce this item. We have received a denial from the courts, and it was interesting that as the council was talking about how we were to proceed with this item, the intent and the discussion of this resolution really is to take a look at home rule. If this resolution passes, this resolution will allow our city manager the authority to file an appeal with regards to the recent ordinance that we passed that was denied onto us. This ordinance, and at the point in time that it was approved, was allowing the smoking age to be moved from 21 to 18. The reason that this is so purchase of smoking. Thank you. There's at least 15 other cities in the state of Kansas, and with ordinances similar to this one. Attorney General Derek Smith issued an opinion concluding that cities exercising their constitutional home rule authority could pass ordinances that are more restrictive in state law, and we did just that. So we, at this point in time, have one person signed up for public comment. If you all would entertain that individual, and then we could proceed with the discussion. That person signed up for public comment is Shannon Quinby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Topeka City Council, City Manager Trout. My name is Shannon Quinby. I spent the early years of my childhood here in Topeka, Kansas, and my family has many fond memories of this great city. I have an opportunity to return back here today from Washington, D.C., from where I traveled this morning, to represent the Preventing Tobacco Addiction Foundation. Established in 1996, the foundation works to reduce the deadly toll of smoking and tobacco product use through a nationwide preventive effort. Our focus is to raise the minimum sales age of all tobacco products, including electronic cigarettes, to 21. Our organization also maintains the official tobacco21.org website. 95% of current smokers started as adolescents. Said another way, If a person has not become a smoker by age 21, there is only a 5% chance they ever will. Tobacco 21 laws dramatically reduce adolescent smoking by disrupting the social availability of nicotine and tobacco products to young people, and by putting legal purchasers outside the social circle of high school students. Tobacco 21 has now been adopted and is being successfully enforced in more than 300 cities, in more than 19 states, nationwide, covering 25% of the country's population. The policy also has a significant impact. New York City and Chicago recently reported decreases in adolescent smoking rates of 30% and 36% respectively. In Johnson County, Kansas, communities that have passed Tobacco 21 report a 37% decrease in teen tobacco use. And as Madam Mayor mentioned, Topeka joined 18 other Kansas communities 4 months ago in its historic vote to pass Tobacco 21. Its work was supported by extensive expert and citizen testimony, and the legality of the ordinance was backed by the opinion of the Kansas Attorney General, who stated that Tobacco 21 laws are a valid exercise of a city's home rule authority. Passing Tobacco 21, as you did, demonstrated your commitment to preserving the health of Topeka's youth. A failure to appeal this decision means a failure for those youth, not just here in Topeka, but in Kansas and beyond. So we implore you to pursue an appeal of this ruling. 4 months ago, you stood up for your kids in a courageous 8-2 vote. We ask that you again take a stand against an industry bent on addicting our youth to a deadly substance. Thank you for your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. At this point in time, we would entertain some discussion or even a motion. Again, the big concern that the city of Topeka has is our ability to work with our home rule. This has generated a lot of interest, not only in the city of Topeka, but by many advocates and many other municipalities taking a look at what's going to happen in the city because of our home rule being contested. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want, for clarification, I think you said our appeal was denied, but we haven't appealed it yet.
We haven't appealed, correct.
So if we can get legal to break it down so that the viewers can understand what we've done, where it's gone. And this also says to the Kansas Appellate Court, shouldn't it say Supreme Court?
Well, Council, I'm sorry.
So if we can get just a clarification and a breakdown so our audiences and our constituents know what we're doing. Thank you.
Sure. The December resolution that the governing body passed prohibits individuals and tobacco and e-cigarette retailers from selling or furnishing cigarettes or tobacco or e-cigarettes to anyone who is under 18 or under 21, while the state law is under 18. And that was kind of the gist of the problem. We were sued on that, even though 15 or so other cities had passed similar resolutions, and we were unsuccessful at the district court level. So what this would do would be to allow the city manager to authorize us to file an appeal. And the first appeal would be, the resolution allows us to appeal the decision. So the first round would be obviously to go to the Court of Appeals, and then from there we would decide if we want to seek any other options beyond that without going to the court. We could ask for a transfer perhaps to the Supreme Court.
I was under the understanding we were going to skip the appeals court and go straight to the Supreme Court.
It's a requirement when you appeal, Councilmember Ortiz, that the first step is the Court of Appeals, and then you can ask for a transfer.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I wanted that clarified because I think all of us were under that understanding. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Honor. So if we do that, what is the risk if the Supreme Court will not take the case?
I have no idea. I could not answer that, Councilmember Jensen. It'd be like crystal ball time.
Because if they choose to leave the lower court ruling in place, then that would leave the existing ruling, if we ask for the transfer anyway.
Well, the Court of Appeals will hear it. So if we file with the Court of Appeals, they will hear it. It's
Okay.
just if we ask for a transfer to the Supreme Court, they're not obligated to take up the case.
Right, so and that's what I'm trying to understand is the process. So if we file the appeal, then we ask for the transfer and the Supreme Court denies it, does it then get
It'll be heard
the
by the
lower
Court of Appeals.
I see.
Yep.
All right, thank you for the clarification.
Absolutely.
Councilman Lesser?
I know we've had some conversations previously. Have we established whether or not we're going to have any other partners in regards to the financing of the appeal?
Councilmember Lester, we haven't yet. I think once we're authorized to file the appeal, we're going to reach out to some of those folks, but we have a lot of individuals and groups who are very interested in assisting us in the appellate process. We have the League of Kansas Municipalities. We have, I believe, a group associated with the Chamber of Commerce in Johnson County. And I know other groups will step up as well to file amicus briefs.
Thank you.
Councilman Emerson, to be followed by Councilman Cohen.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was, in the resolution at least, it's saying that the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce, the Healthcare Foundation of Greater Kansas City, and the League of Municipalities have agreed to provide assistance with the appeal. So that's correct?
They have, Councilmember Emerson. We have talked with them, but at this point, we don't know specifically what role they will play, whether they'll file amicus briefs, whether they'll provide a monetary donation or that, but they have pledged support.
Thank you.
Councilman Cohen.
Nothing.
Deputy Mayor.
So the comments I want to state on this are, for one thing, I'm really surprised and excited the number of organizations and groups that have come out to support the community in its effort to do this. I mean, this is an important thing for our children. It's an important thing for the state. And initially, I had some reservations that this is a fight that really needs to happen at the State House. But in working with groups to understand the process of what it takes to get there, this is a much bigger issue than just our little tiny resolution. I mean, your comments about home rule and the state of Kansas are spot on. And I just want to point out that, once again, as is usual, Topeka is on the forefront of change in our region and in our state. And I think it's commendable that we continue to look for ways to better ourselves, and we're going to get some bumps and bruises as we move through the process. But throughout our history, we have done things like this. We have bucked the trend, and we have pushed the boundaries. And so, once again, here we are doing what is right, even though it may not necessarily be popular. And with that, I will move to approve.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second? Councilwoman Clear seconds. Is there any further discussion with regards to the matter? Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. As you guys might recall, I guess a few of you weren't on here, but I voted against the original ordinance, not because I'm in favor of smoking, but I saw it as a basically an affront to personal liberties of adults. That said, in my discussions with staff and with the legal department, as I understand this is really a issue of our home rules applicable in Kansas. So for that reason, I will support this item.
Any other comments? Councilman Mays.
Full disclosure, I have what many would probably perceive as a conflict of interest with my employment, and so I'll be abstaining from the vote.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we proceed with the voting.
We have 7 yes, 2 no, Ms. Ortiz and Mr. Cohen, and 1 abstention, Mr. Mays.
7 having voting yes, the motion passes. Now the staff has authorization to go ahead and pursue appeal. We now move on to non-action items.
All right.
Item A, if the clerk would read.
A is a discussion related to the Quinton Heights Steel Neighborhood Plan as an element of the comprehensive plan.
It seems like I received the document. I am so sorry to break protocol. It seems like I received the document from somebody signing up. Are you interested in speaking for item A, 7A?
I am.
It's for this one, right? Okay.
Yes.
You're good. Sorry, I thought it was 6A. We already went through that. Sorry. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Today, we're excited to bring forward the presentation regarding the Clinton Heights Steel Neighborhood Plan. It's an excellent plan that they've worked long and hard to produce with many inputs from their neighborhood. And so I asked Director Bill Fiander to go through it this time.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. City Manager, governing body. Pleasure. I will take you through the first ever Clinton Heights Steel Neighborhood Plan. They've been waiting many years for this, let me tell you. Since I've been here, I think they've been waiting for this.
How long is that?
For about 21 years. Good things come to those who wait, huh? So why are we, and Mr. City Manager is right on, this is one of the hardest working groups that we've been, I say something really good about every neighborhood we work with, but there is no harder working group, I will say, that we've worked with. Rolled up their sleeves. We did add a couple months to this process, but it was well served. You last year had voted on Clinton Heights as one of your two sort neighborhood, and we provide this planning assistance in 2017. We are in the 2018 year, so this is an implementation year as well as next year. We'll have implementation for 1.4 million of infrastructure and a little bit over 300,000 of housing funds from CDBG and home. The process that we were involved with, as I said, was they were very involved. This is usually a 6-month process. We started last summer, tend to finish up here at the end of the year or beginning of this year, and we did pause for a couple months to make sure we were going through and getting the priorities correct and as funded as much as we possibly could into their plan, so we had a real plan to move forward with. But nonetheless, we did get through, and we're here tonight. Stepping back, a little bit of the history of this neighborhood for those that who may not know anything but the sledding hill, which is technically not in the neighborhood, just outside these boundaries at least for the NIA. So the NIA is bounded by 21st, 27th, Western, and Washburn. It's 160 acres, which is the size of Washburn's campus. To give you some perspective, it's big. Two kind of important historical tidbits that literally shaped this neighborhood. One is the Shunganunga Creek that flows through the neighborhood was straightened back in the 1930s. You see on here the yellow dashed line. That is the old creek channel. And so after they straightened that out, there was still a nice floodplain there, which has been now turned into a major asset, which is the Shunga Glen Park for the neighborhood. That being said, the flooding and floodplain issues are still a big challenge for the revitalization of a good part of this neighborhood. The last thing here was Old Burlingame. Many of you may not know where Buchanan Street that runs between 21st and 27th used to be Burlingame Road before it got moved over to where Washburn is. What that did was create a lot of, and you still have some non-conforming commercial businesses along Buchanan. That's why you had a lot more traffic back in the day, way back in the day. So it has changed a little bit, but moving forward on the health trends, when we got to them last year, the latest data did show that there was definitely declining health trends for the area. The last couple years have been at risk, or the last couple updates we've had have been at risk. So this was a good time to start a plan for revitalization. The housing conditions in the area, 660 people population-wise. You've got about a $40,000 average single-family home price. About 40% of the homes do need some repair, and about a quarter of those are in need of significant repair. Infrastructure-wise, you have an older area, so that one that has poor pavement conditions, narrow streets, not as much curb and gutter as most places of this age, open storm drains, gaps in the sidewalks, unpaved alleys. So those sort of things, we want to bring a lot of that through this plan. You'll see a couple instances where we want to bring that up to urban standards for what you would expect in this type of neighborhood. Future land use, a little more lay of the land here. Future land use, really preserving a lot of and promoting this big yellow swath. The core of the neighborhood is single-family residential. When you get onto the perimeters of the neighborhood, you start to get into more intensive uses, commercial, multiple family, and you also can see Shunga Glen Park and the Shunga Trail, the green area that goes through the northern half and western half of the neighborhood. The neighborhood and staff collaborate to select a target area. The target area where we will concentrate most of the infrastructure and housing investments. That target area was showed as the most neediest, if you will, in terms of housing conditions, infrastructure, code, as well as crime. So Clay between 24th and 27th, those 3 blocks are part of it, and then Clay, Central Park, and Fillmore between 24th and 25th are part of it. So it's about a 5-block target area. One of the things we have to keep in mind when we do the housing part of this, most important here is you can see this map shows just how expansive the floodplain is, that the pink is the floodway, and then the blue is the floodplain, of which we cannot use federal dollars for housing to rehabilitate homes in that area. So more than probably half of the blocks there are affected, and so we just have to, again, be reminded in our target area to stay outside, and so we will not be able to invest federal dollars within that floodplain area. As far as the infrastructure goes, this is a bit of a list of the priorities. We'll start at the top there. You can see a street reconstruction, actually 5 blocks of street reconstruction on 24th Street and Central Park was the highest priority. Alleys, there will be a little bit of alley work, but those will be regrading and regraveling those for the most part. Pedestrian improvements, including a little bit of sidewalk infill, but more probably a project that we really kind of rose at the top there is it's a partial traffic calming and also pedestrian crossing at 24th and Buchanan, which is the main access into the park. It is also eventually, or is, the route that children going to Stout Elementary would walk through the park, and we've also proposed a sidewalk link through the park and a pedestrian bridge over the Shunga that connects to the Shunga Trail and really connects the 2 halves of this park. That's something they've never had. It's really kind of their biggest priority that came out of this. So, all told, we've got, as I said, about $1.4 million going into infrastructure. Just to give you some idea of the parks part of it, it's about a little bit over $400,000. These 2 pictures give some illustration as to what would some changes that would be on the left-hand side. You see one of the streets that would be reconstructed. We would add curb and gutter, widen it by about 5 feet, give a little more. That's still under standard in terms of our normal width, but as you can see, sidewalks are in. We still have the open storm drains there, so those will be closed up, curb and gutter, a little more, little more than what is there now in terms of the width. And then on the right-hand side, you see, for illustration purposes only, the yellow dashed line would be a rendering of where the sidewalk and the pedestrian bridge would connect the neighborhood with the west side of the Shunga and Shunga Glen Park. So that actually is a safe routes issue for children going from this neighborhood to Stout, which is across Washburn. There used to be a neighborhood school open in the area, Quinton Heights, going eastward, but now we're going the other way. So this is another critical reason why this was so important to them. And lastly, just to sum up the park, we did have a representative from Shawnee County Parks, worked really closely with on trying to get some amenities as part of their overall master plan for that park. So City of Topeka would fund about $370,000 in the sidewalk and the pedestrian bridge, lighting, and a basketball court. Shawnee County has about $35,000 of various improvements, upgraded the water fountains, benches, signage, some of the play structures there, but that would leave about another $85,000 that did not get funded through the sort process. The 400-some thousand that I did speak of is funded for the next this year, next year. Our hope is, through working with the county, that they will be able to come back with the remaining $85,000 or so in the improvements that the neighborhood wants in the next few years after that. So we're pretty confident that can happen, but that was a challenge working through the timing of how that would all work through. But the neighborhood, as I said, was very diligent in trying to make sure their priorities would have funding. We don't fund everything through the sort. We do put things in there that are not funded, but that could get funded through other resources, and that's part of how this ended up. So next steps, very simply, we'd like to propose adoption of this plan as part of our comprehensive plan next week, and get to work after that for the next 2 years. So I want to thank my staff, Tim Esparza, our project manager. He got his indoctrination into neighborhood planning with this group, so that is close to my heart. Dan Warner, my staff, but also staffs of other departments, very closely working with Sasha in Department of Neighborhood Relations, Jason Peak, Brian Faust from Public Works, very closely. So it was a real team effort, and I just wanted to give a shout out to them before I close up. Thank you. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Bill. Before we proceed with questions and discussion, we have the president of the NA here, the NIA, James Proud, and he has signed up for comments. So James, if you could come forward.
How's everybody doing today?
Well.
I just came up here to give you guys a little bit more of a personal touch about how our NIA and the people in the neighborhood feel about this plan and how important it is to us. For the last 20 or 25 years or so, I would say Quinton Heights Steel has been kind of a forgotten neighborhood. Many people forget that it was, for a very long time, the predominant minority neighborhood in Topeka. There were lots of minority doctors, dentists, people like that lived in that neighborhood. It was very affluent. We had a school. We had the USD 501 building, all very, very, very close. We had businesses running down Old Burlingame. It was a really, really great place to live. Over the years, we've been downzoned. We didn't have a plan So we weren't able to apply for things like SORT grants for a long time. This was our first real shot at it, and we got it, and thank you. But like I said earlier, you know, we've kind of been forgotten a bit. It's still a great place to live. You know, we have fairly low crime for our economic status in our neighborhood. You know, but when you drive by it on 21st Street or you're going to 29th Street, you've already passed us. You know, by the time, if you're going on Topeka Boulevard, you see the country club neighborhood, you don't see our neighborhood. On Burlingame, you know, you have the park and then you have a couple of apartments. So people aren't really very familiar with our neighborhood. And I think that's kind of a good thing in ways. In ways we want to bring more to our neighborhood. We've got Washburn University so close. Building a pedestrian bridge will help link Washburn University to our neighborhood. Stout School, since Quinton Heights is now closed, Stout School is where the majority of the children in our neighborhood go to. It provides them safe access to be able to go to school. They don't have to cross a major street. That's big. You know, also, the more activity, the more good people we have in our park, the less bad that's in our park, you know. Light makes the darkness go away. So I just want to say thank you to the staff, Tim and Dan and Sasha and everybody that really helped us out. I really hope that you guys take this plan into consideration. It really, truly means a lot of vitality for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could stay close just in case as we start talking, if there's any questions for you. Team, this is a non-action item, is up for discussion, but we do have Mr. Proud and we have Mr. Finder and his team available for you if you have any questions. Councilwoman Clear.
Bill, I have a question for you. You said you were going to go 22 feet instead of the 17.
Mm-hmm.
What's the average? What's normal? And why aren't you going that far?
Cost is the first.
But are you going to have to go back sometime and then make it wider?
Engineer, Councilwoman Claire, we worked hand in hand with our engineering department to come up with those estimates as to what, and work with the neighborhood on that. And in terms of getting more blocks done, and still kind of balancing that, the need for a I won't call it a standard is 28 feet wide from face of curb to face of curb. So this would be 22. And so balancing that out, trying to get a few more blocks done when you don't really need that. That was sort of the compromise or the balancing act that we had to do. So that was the recommendation, to get more done, to go to an acceptable standard, not a substandard I wouldn't put it that way, but certainly to have the storm drains put in was a huge deal. Curb and gutter, huge deal. So it will feel wider. It will act different, but probably not totally necessary to do that wide of a street in that dense of an area.
Why not?
Again, just costs. I mean,
why? You said it's really not necessary to do 28. Why not?
The volume of traffic on the street in those streets are not what we would, and the cost that it would add to the project, just the cost benefit wasn't there, and I think the neighborhood understood trying to get more out of this than we could do one really nice block. And if Mr. Peak wants to add to that.
Thank you, Bill. So one other thing, when we worked through this neighborhood plan with the neighborhood, one of the large concerns was speed of traffic and looking at doing traffic calming. And so, as Mr. Finder indicated, that width is not a substandard width. I mean, there's still plenty wide room for two cars to pass. but it's not such a width that would give excess space that would encourage speeding. We heard a lot during the neighborhood planning process about Buchanan and the city's attempt to install speed humps on that street as a traffic calming issue. And so that's another reason why it's a narrower street than what a typical new subdivision might do as a wide one, but perfectly an acceptable width from a transportation design as well as fitting with the character of the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I'd just like to say that Clinton Steele Heights is overdue. They're very overdue. They weren't a low to moderate intensity, and so therefore they couldn't have a plan at that particular time. We were only going out drafting plans with the NIAs, and over the years they've kind of went down, so now they are. They do qualify, and staff has done a great job at working with them to get a neighborhood plan, which is one of our criteria to get a grant. So we had a, 2.5-hour meeting last night with the NIA, Parks and Recs, the members, and they are supportive. I think there was some, I talked to the city manager today, I think there was some confusion of what's going in and what's not going in, so I'm going to be a second here. But I do want to say to the staff that thank you, because these guys are really compassionate and they want to bring young people into the neighborhood, and that's one of the parks to do it. And then we talked about different ideals. But they were told that the SORT grant, that funding comes out of the general fund, and that's why certain things will not be done. Is that correct? I know that's not a question I asked you earlier, so if you need to get back with me, that's fine. I just want to clarify some things that we talked about.
Yes, you're accurate. It's out of the general fund relative to that.
Okay. And then we made a change. You know, I've been an NIA president years ago. If you go to, let's go to Jackson, Samuel Jackson Spray Park, all of that equipment was done by grants, by our NIAs. And I think it's really sad when we stop doing that, because they go out and they look and they see, and I know I hear this argument all the time that the parks do not belong to us anymore. And I was so glad to be at a meeting with the human trafficking that said, yes, it is our problem. Because you know what, the parks are still our problem. But we want to say, no, it's not our problem, so let's don't fund it like that. That we all utilize them. The city utilizes them, the county utilizes them. And so I hope we can get back to that when we have these SORT grants, that when these neighborhoods and they want different things for their youth, to bring their youth and keep their youth close to home, you know, that we would look at that, because those are their grants and those are the things that they want. Not that, you know, that's why they bring their plans forward, and then to knock them down and say, well, no, we're not going to do that anymore. I don't really like that. I think we're not really looking at the overall picture, because things are expensive, especially park equipment. So having said all that, I did talk to the city manager about that, and I asked him to make sure that we're aware of those changes, so we're not fighting a fight that doesn't need to be fought. But anyway, that's another story. So I think there was some understanding that there were some things cut out of the process, and I guess that's where the 78,000, is that correct?
85,000.
85,000, okay. And so they were kind of disappointed there. But in talking to the county does have a little bit of extra money. We did learn that last night, to throw around where Parks and Recs were concerned. So I did encourage James, the Clinton Steele Heights NIA president, to go ahead, and I hope that you sent that proposal over to the county to ask for some of that money. And I will continue to ask all of our NIAs to do that, to support that. But I think communication is so crucial between staff and city council members, and so that we're going back to our presidents and we're giving them the feedback that they need, and they don't get very disappointed when their plans come up and they think that they're not going to be presented, or even, I mean, it's already hard for them to understand. It takes us a couple of years. And so to not have information that they need, that's even heart-wrenching, because it's a fight we really don't have to have. So I hope we will continue to look at that. I go to different parks. I frequent the parks quite a bit with my grandchildren, and I see a lot, and I do go back to the board, and that's one of the reasons why when we merged with the city that we wanted that board, so we could still have input. And so I just think it's a twofold. I think that we really need to look at our grants and what we're going to allow and what we're not. And the county did say they're trying to bypass us, that they can go directly and get their own grants and apply for them and then work hand in hand with the NIA. So I think it was a good meeting. I thank you for our conversation today, City Manager. I know I call you at the last minute all the time. That's just how I operate. Get used to it. And I hope that everybody would look at this and approve it next week. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councilman Lesser.
Yes. Bill, maybe I can ask you, on the project where it has lists the homeowner and landlord rehab, the cost, $330,000, is there, what's the process in breaking that down in between homeowners versus landlord? And I asked that question with another question attached to it. Typically, when we look at these projects, one thing that did kind of stand out to me when I did look at this is it's roughly 75% rental occupancy versus homeowners occupancy. Can you basically kind of expand on those questions?
Councilman Lesser, let me hit the second question, and I'm going to let Ms. Hahn take the first question if she can. But the rental units are a little bit misleading. There are two very large apartment complexes in the neighborhood, so the number of units do indicate, yeah, more rental. But that's, in terms of the single-family homes, there are majority are owner-occupied. So that's what we would be working on, is the single-family home in the neighborhood, not the apartment complexes. So in terms of the process, did you want to help someone else?
Good evening, governing body members. Councilmember Lesser, to answer your question, so typically we go with the desire of the neighborhood. Most neighborhoods do want us to focus on the owner-occupied homes, obviously. Just real briefly, we have two different programs. The owner-occupied offers up to $30,000 in funding for the rehab, and we can do interior and exterior. For the rental property, the exterior rehab program, it offers up to $15,000. The landlord has to put in the first 10%, and it only addresses exterior issues. Historically, we get a lot more uptake on the owner-occupied program than we do the rental program, but we will be focusing again on owner-occupied homes.
That answered my question, and thank you. The only additional is, and the portion that kind of brought to my attention was, when we do use the, and part of this is an education because I am still learning, is my concern would be rental rates going up. Is there any type of check and balances for, okay, we improved this for this landlord, and then next month it goes up, rent goes up?
That's a great question. So in order for your rental property to qualify for our exterior rehab program, we have to verify that your tenant meets our low-income guidelines that HUD sends to us annually. And then you have to verify that you're going to maintain that as an affordable rental unit for as long as the funds remain attached to the property. And so there's a portion that is a soft second mortgage, and then a portion that is a grant that slides down over a period of years as long as it's occupied by a low-income resident, but now I'm getting way in the weeds, and I can already feel these guys looking at me, so.
No, that gets it. No, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, this is a discussion item, and it will be presented next week for approval with the agenda. At this point, we move to item B in the non-action items, if the clerk would read.
B is discussion regarding the time at which public comment is received during governing body meetings.
This item is one that Councilman Mays and Councilman Cohen and I had great discussion about, and there was some concerns with regards to residents and citizens coming over, speaking to the city council body, and sometimes our meetings are very long. So they had, Councilman Mays had stated that it was a question of whether do we go ahead and have the public comment at a different point in time in the meeting. Councilman Cohen and I had a really good discussion. We forwarded this to legal, and at this point in time, this is just an item for all of us to have a conversation with regards to what do we think with regards to the positioning of the public comments section in the meeting? What are your opinions, and is there a need for us to rearrange the way that we do business? So I would open up the floor to the two individuals that started this conversation with me, so that.
Go first, Jimmy.
Well, as you can tell, we sit next to each other, so we were sort of tossing it around after a meeting that went about 4 hours a month or two ago, and we had a gentleman that came up and asked about a noise complaint that he had received for a race car, and his comments lasted about 30 seconds. And I thought, wow, this guy's been sitting here for 4 hours to come up here to say 30 seconds. And then I think we addressed the situation later on after the meeting. But I just thought, man, it feels kind of mean of us to make people sit through it when, I think we could easily get people's comments at the beginning of the meeting before we get into our presentations and everything else. And so did you have something you'd like to add as well?
No, it's along the same lines, Mayor. Yeah, we had some community groups that pointed out that they had to sit through discussions on this and that, and just so they could come up and speak to the council. And I'm thinking maybe just an opportunity at the beginning of the meeting to maybe say, is there anyone that wishes to address the council, and let that happen and still have comments at the end of the meeting. I know that there's probably things that people want to comment about after they've heard the discussion going on. So that's something I'd like to offer out there.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you. One of the reasons why we put it at the end, because people were concerned with getting off work at 5 and rushing over and, taking their kids where they need to or doing whatever. So they liked it at the end, so they knew that they could get situated and get over here. So I think that's how it ended up here. But, sometimes we might have 20 speakers. So if we're looking for a quick way, I don't see us doing anything quick. But that's originally, I think, how it got there is so because people, they already complained about signing up at 5. So, back then the starting time was 7, so these meetings are really good. You should try the 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning meetings. Those were really good.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Do you gentlemen anticipate somebody could sign up at the beginning and the ending, or would they be limited to one or the other?
I'd say beginning or the end would be my preference.
So we follow the same basic procedure now, where you can either call ahead and get on the list for one or the other or both, or sign up at the end, or at the beginning of the meeting?
Yeah, and it's just because the people that want to just talk about the curb being broken.
Sure.
And I just feel it'd be nicer if they can just come and then they can just leave.
No, I'm not opposed at all. I think it's an excellent idea. Thank you.
Councilman Hiller.
It's an interesting idea. Having been on the council a little, now Councilman Cohen's been on for a while. I mean, we've had times when like we have a dozen people signed up. There's a group that's got an issue that they want to talk about and everybody takes their 4 minutes. When that happens, that's over an hour of public comment. And so when we don't ask anybody what they came to talk about, it's just whatever they wanted to talk about, they can talk about. Sometimes too, well, we now are accepting comment on zoning, so there aren't any issues that we put on the, well, there might be, sometimes we still have discussion only comments amongst ourselves that we don't invite public comment at the time. Sometimes people come, somebody mentioned, to kind of hear what we have to say, but go ahead and get their 4 minutes in, or whatever it is they had to say, just kind of for the road to make sure that we have that input. In terms of agenda management, I don't have a firm position, it's just discussion. We've tried really hard to be, to publish the agenda so people have an idea where they are on it, where their issue is on it, and if any of you, I have for myself in the past or for other people called in and talked to the clerk's office to say, so about when do you think that would come up? And the clerk's office wisely says, we really can't tell you. But still, you have an idea how that agenda is going to flow. And so to put public comment up front, and I understand, I too was very much in favor of letting people sign up when they arrived, because it's also been painful in the past when people who never come showed up and found out they couldn't talk, and it was a big deal, and they were prepared and then couldn't speak. So we took care of that one. I'm just not sure, because there can be so many. So just a thought.
Deputy Mayor?
I appreciate those comments, though my opinion of it is it's their right to come and share their comments with the body, and we are obligated to listen to them. And I think I do understand that it takes time, but that's our responsibility as representatives. So yes, if there's 2 hours of public comment, we signed up for that. So I very much appreciate the comments I get from my constituents, and would, if we can give people more opportunity to come and share their thoughts and feelings, and I think that's a good thing. I do recognize that when we have agendas that are packed full of things, that it might take a little longer, but that's part of representing folks is understanding their opinions. And I encourage anyone to come and speak before the council. And if we can give people additional opportunities so that it's easier for their families and their lives to do so, I think we should. Maybe a compromise for that would be if we know it's going to be a hot item or a busy agenda, at some point maybe we ask people, could you choose the beginning or the ending, just because it's so long. Just a thought. I do think we should try it for a meeting or two, though, and just see how it works.
Councilman Cohen?
And I wanted to address, somebody said something about it taking an hour or whatever, and, we spend an hour at the end of the meeting listening to public comments. So I'm all for taking our lumps up front and getting it over with. Not that to that extent, but have them speak up front, and then they can go. I think that just seems fair to me.
Councilman Padilla?
Lumps up front. I don't like that. I'm supportive of giving it a try. And I think my reason would be because we all want to hear from our constituents, just like Deputy Mayor spoke about. And if we can in any way make it convenient for them or less inconvenient by making them sit through a long meeting that they may not want to sit through, and that in any way discourages people to come down and participate in their local government, I think that's the wrong direction to go. I really think that anything we can do to get people to participate in their local government, it's a good idea.
Councilwoman Ortiz?
I'm gonna address this to Lumpy over there. I like to take care of business and then deal with that. So that's just what I like to do. I like it the way that it is, and again, they were just really. It's not that I don't want to hear public comment. I just don't want to hear it at the beginning. I'd rather hear it at the end so we can find a solution or something like that. I'm not saying cut the time or nothing like that if that's what you thought I said, but that'll give them. I don't want to hear it twice either. I just don't want to hear it before and after. And I think that can be quite confusing to say, oh, well, we thought it was after, oh, we thought it was before. I mean.
Councilman Lesser?
In my opinion, I don't know that we have a right or a wrong reason to this. I think Councilman Ortiz, I think, makes a good point in regards to the fact of people trying to rush here to get here for a reason to have it at the end. I would not support having it at the end and at the beginning. I just wouldn't. The only other thing I would say that I would point out, just you know, many times in business when I go to make a presentation, especially if I'm traveling, then they'll make a motion to move me up to the beginning of the agenda on that meeting, because otherwise I'm waiting for the entire time. I think we could also take a look at that in regards to if we look at it and we only have 2 people signed up, and then we want to move it to the front so they can do that and be on their way, that's fine, versus what Councilman Hiller talked about as well is, you know, the reality of it is we all are human. And when we do have to work on business, our attention span as human beings is only a certain amount. And I don't know that listening for an hour and a half of public comment prior to doing the city's business is the best answer for us either. So I just put those out as suggestions.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Well, I didn't want my comments to be misconstrued, and perhaps they were. I mean, I'm in for the duration, so I'm here. Part of the agenda management has to do with the fact that the public has come. And so we are worried about the people who've come with an unscheduled item that have to wait to the end. But we watch how the hall is often packed at the beginning, and then as we work through our agenda, people are able to leave. And so my thoughts were much more in terms of agenda management for the public, the people who are coming, people who are watching because they want to hear certain items, they're following certain items, as well as the people who've taken their time to come. So that's my only reason. You know, we don't go as long as council meetings used to go. Very often at all anymore. A compromise might be to break at 8:30, you know, to do public comment at 8:30, let's say, if we hadn't already gotten to the end of the meeting, just so that the public didn't have to wait till 11 or something like that. Just a thought.
Just from hearing the conversation, I'll tell you that the only concern that I would have at having the public comments immediately at the front is I rather enjoy the fact that a lot of times there's an individual that comes for public comment, and more often than none, they don't know that public comment is just for comment, and they're looking for a moment of engagement with the governing body. And the nice thing of having it at the end is that you have the chance, and you see it often. Somebody goes ahead and finishes the meeting and says, hey, wait up, I'm gonna go ahead. And the cameras don't catch that. But it's really nice when you see the council members just get up and approach the individual and just say, hey, I'm going to connect you with the staff person. I'm going to take care of you. It's not you going ahead and saying what you have to say, and then we have to rush into meetings. If we were to do something, I like that idea of having a break. We typically have a break at 8 o'clock. We go ahead, everybody gets to stretch their legs, move around. So I think that would be a nice compromise to take a look at maybe having that break. That way, that personal touch and that interaction that I like to see happen after public comment can continue happening, because that is my biggest concern. Councilwoman Ortiz.
You know, and Mayor, maybe the clerk can ask, you know, is there, you know, like some of our elderly, I can understand that need to leave, or, you know, somebody that needs to leave, and maybe the clerk can ask, is there any reason why you can't stay to the agenda item, and maybe let you know or something. Then, you know, that would be another flag. You know, like that gentleman, maybe, you know, they might need to go to work or whatever, you know. That might be another thing that we can, you know, write on there and look at that.
Wow. Councilman Mays and Councilman Cohen later on.
I just have a question, I guess, for staff, perhaps. Is there any reason why, if we have the agenda, that we can't do some sort of an action to change the order of the agenda if it fits, if we only have one person sign up, can we ask them if they want to go at the beginning? I mean, do we have the flexibility to do such things?
You do, because Council Rule 5.3 just states what has to be included in the agenda, not the order in which it occurs.
So we don't, and we're not going to need to vote on this? Is that my understanding? Because it's not anything that's in written rules or anything like that? It is? Okay. Okay.
The language
yeah.
contained in the council rule, though, states that these things shall be included
Not the order.
as part of the agenda, but it does not state that it has to be in this order. So you wouldn't have to amend the council rules if you wanted to switch up the order. You just have to make sure that these items are covered in the agenda.
Councilwoman Hiller?
One other thought just for the discussion is that I wonder how many of the people that you are thinking of, even though they had to wait a long time, might feel a little more comfortable being, having everybody else have left by the time they state. Often those are kind of heartrending, very personal issues. And so from looking at it from that person's point of view, even though they had to wait, whether maybe that's better for their privacy or their personal feelings. I don't know.
Councilman Cohen?
Sorry, Mayor, not to be humorous, but could we hear from the public on this one? If
Absolutely.
there's somebody signed up to speak.
One person signed
Thank
up
you.
to speak in this item, and that individual is Mr. Clark Trammell.
Well, good evening. Nice to see you all. I'm here to talk to you from a business perspective on this topic, and I'm glad you're not taking it lightly, because this is something that is extremely important. I think you all realize that, to engage the public within the relationship of this body. In looking at this, I really came to speak on another subject, so I'll be back up here in a minute, but I thought since I was here, I would like to address it. I've done a lot of due diligence for you, because if I'm going to come talk to you, I want to be intelligent about it. When I looked this up and studied across the United States and council meetings, et cetera, you all can design your council meeting any way you want. You don't have to have public comments. You can completely alleviate that. Or you can elect to have public comments. When you do elect to have public comments, it becomes a public forum legally, of which you come into compliance with a number of rules that you have to follow and a number of procedures that you follow. Do you want inclusion or exclusion? And my feeling about that simply is there's no happy medium to any decision you're going to make. My opinion from a business person to you out of respect to this council is that you have business to conduct. This is your meeting that I'm here to learn or to participate with. And if I have to wait to say something, I'd rather you be fresh and energetic and on it and take care of my city's business. And then I'll participate and give you my comments. But this is your meeting, and you need to be comfortable with, do I want to be tired at 9 or do I want to be awake at 8 and cover whatever it is? It's business, and the public will understand that as long as you give them the courtesy to participate. What's important is I'm noticing a change of procedure that has a lot to do with when the public and why the public wants to have comments. It used to be, for those of you that sit on the council and have been here for a while, you would have an item, you'd make a motion, you'd do a second, and then the public would speak. Well, the decision's already been made. It felt like, why am I even here when I wanted to give input? I'm seeing a change where you're inviting the public to interact with you and have a conversation before you go to the motion and a second and a vote. That's a big difference. That's a huge difference in the relationship, the feelings we have, and how we act on those. Public meetings are involved with the First and 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. And in doing that, you follow those rules. So I applaud you all for having this conversation, and know it isn't something taken slightly or lightly. And if I have to sit and wait, then I sit and wait. If you want to do something in the interim, that's your choice. For instance, Lawrence they have their public comments at the end of the meeting. Manhattan has theirs at the first of the meeting. Manhattan gives them 3 minutes. Lawrence gives them 4 minutes. In the state of the United States, over half of the council meetings don't allow public comments. Or they underwrite the comment to know if it's approved or part of the meeting they're having. So you've got a lot of flexibility here to contain or to expand what you want to do. So I hope that helps you all in this decision, and I appreciate your discussion, and I'll be here till the end if I have to be to wait for public comments. So thank you all.
Thank you, Clark. Great comments. Any further comments from the body? Questions? Again, this would not be an item for vote. I was checking with legal. We have the authority to make changes if we were to need to. But it was really good to have this discussion out in the open so that everybody could go and share their concerns and their thoughts and their opinions. Seeing no other comments? Councilwoman Clear.
So how are we going to decide? Who's going to decide if we don't vote? Who's going to go?
Consensus.
So we are going to kind of vote. Not vote, but vote.
Kind of.
Well, we're not changing anything unless.
Yeah. Mayor and Councilmember Claire, would you mind if staff maybe pursued some options and presented them to you about how we could maybe go with the option of breaking at 8:30 if it's going to be a long meeting, or maybe the clerk asking folks when they call to inquire, are you restricted by work? Would you need to go ahead of time, or will you be able to wait till the end? I mean, maybe we can try to work through some things and provide some options. That works?
Would the body be amicable to that? To waiting for, so at this point in time, we would just await for staff solutions, and then if we have to come back to the body and make a determination, we would do that in public. Okay?
We'll do it.
Thank you all for the good discussion. We now move on to item C. If the clerk would read.
C is discussion of the proposition of levying an additional special purpose retailer's sales tax of 0.75% in the city of Topeka for the purpose of paying for certain improvements in the city pursuant to KSA 12-187 et seq as amended.
City Manager, it is almost 8 o'clock. Speaking of breaking, would it be possible for us to take a 5-minute recess so that we could go into the item, or does the body want to continue the meeting?
Continue.
Continue. In this regard, we continue.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, what we wanted to do was continue the discussion with the governing body related to the consideration of renewal of our half-cent retailer sales tax. And as we did through the process as staff and looked at a variety of issues, we have looked at that we feel there's a need to consider a 0.75% sales tax instead of the 0.5 sales tax. So in order to go through that discussion, determine if that's the direction that the governing body would like to go, based off of what we feel there is a need to consider going to that level. Dr. Peak is going to go through a presentation and then go through a set of discussion questions at the end to help us hopefully come to a situation where we feel we can make a decision and in order to be able to bring a final decision or a motion back from before the council.
Dr. Peak.
Thank you, governing body. So as City Manager said, we're here to talk about the citywide retailer sales tax discussion. I'm going to just give you a little background and then actually get into some discussion about it. But why are we talking about a sales tax renewal that expires in October 2019? Well, two primary reasons for that. One, our CIP that's currently before you basically assumes that there's a renewal of the sales tax in its current format. We need to kind of have that certainty of information to help us plan for future infrastructure projects. And so trying to engage the body in a discussion about where we're going to move with that. And then the other reason is timing. There is a general election in November. So we have the opportunity to put this on a ballot to the voters in November as part of a larger election, as opposed to doing a special election of which the city would have to bear the cost. So with that understanding, I just want to kind of remind you what we're talking about. The citywide retailer sales tax pays about 52% of our funding for pavement management. And when we talk about pavement management, you could stretch all the streets here in Topeka one lane, and it would stretch from Topeka to basically San Diego, California. That's about 1,610 miles. So, I mean, that's a lot of pavement that the city has responsibility for. And so in 2009, the voters approved a citywide retailer sales tax because, like today, there were a lot of concerns about the conditions of our streets and what could we do to improve them. And so we've talked to you about this before, but I just kind of want to remind you. So 2009, that citywide retailer sales tax went in place to improve the condition of our streets. And we have made a lot of progress over that period, improving a lot of streets. But the reality is over half of our system is still what we would call in a poor condition. That's why we get the calls about potholes and the complaints about the condition of our streets. And so it takes a significant investment for us to move the needle on that. And so we've talked to you about shifting our strategy. How do we improve our streets? And that's moving from a project focus to a program focus. And we talked about within that program focus that there's a performance basis to it. We've kind of defined a number that the council wants us to work towards that reflects an overall pavement system score of 60. And that performance number helps us understand what budget is needed to achieve that goal over a period of time. And so it's a very different conversation than we were in 2009 talking about what streets are we going to work on with the sales tax. When the countywide retailer sales tax talks about we're going to work on these specific projects. But that question doesn't help you understand how do we improve the overall condition of our streets. And that's why we switched to a program focus. And I think that's best illustrated by this graph, and I just want to hang out here and revisit this with you. But basically on the left-hand side of the chart, what this is reflecting is the value of streets in need of reconstruction, okay? So this is what we call our backlog. These are streets that really, we fix the highest severity potholes, but the best way to spend our money would be to reconstruct them. So we keep them in a serviceable condition. Serviceable means drivable, doesn't mean it's a smooth ride, but that's what we do. And so in 2017, the value of that backlog was roughly $330 million. And so as we talked about a PCI goal, looking towards the future, in 2017, we were at an annual investment of about $19.1 million annually is what we had forecasted. And what you see with that is our backlog trend is increasing. So that value of streets in need of reconstruction is increasing. And we basically said to the council, if you focused on a PCI goal of 60, which required $24.4 million annually, you'd see in about 2023, our backlog peaks, okay? And then we start to see that downward trend in the value of streets in need and reconstruction. And then the last line is basically $31.9 million. That's shooting for a PCI target of 65. You see a more significant rapid decline. And what that means in those out years, those additional dollars are allocated to reconstructing those streets and getting them out of our inventory. And so this is what a program focus helps us do, and it helps us start to address the pothole problem. It will never go away. I mean, you always have streets they're deteriorating. They have potholes. That's part of their service life. But this helps us more strategically allocate our resources to achieve a performance goal. More recently, we've talked to you about kind of the current funding forecast. And so this is looking into the future over the period of the countywide retailer sales tax. And I know that's confusing to a lot of people. We have a countywide sales tax, we have a citywide sales tax. Countywide does very specific projects. Citywide has kind of a program orientation. It says you want to invest in streets, you want to invest in curb and gutter, those types of things. Also assumed within this forecast is that the general fund, which in 2018 started kicking in $1.2 million for pavement management, continues that trend. And the other key piece is that our GEO bond, as we start to work towards the out years, contributes an annual $3 million. That's about a third of our under our debt financing policy of what happens within the GEO bond. And then it assumes continuation of the existing half-cent citywide sales tax with the current distribution into the different projects. And that still leaves us $1 million short of that average annual investment needed to improve to that PCI goal of 60. And so I just kind of want to pause right there with that background before we actually get into discussion of the resolution and some discussion questions for you to see if there's any clarification needed.
Are there any comments? Deputy Mayor.
Just quickly, so as we start discussing what this new tax would cover, will that include infrastructure underneath of the streets?
So we're going to get into those as discussion questions, because I think that's some of the things we want to ask you. I mean, we've also heard about the ability to add elements to existing streets, i.e. adding curb and gutter or stormwater, which is part of the reason why we've recommended that increase, but we need to talk about priorities for that as well.
Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Peak, if I could ask, this chart right here, is that showing the 0.75 that's proposed, or is that the 0.5?
That's the 0.5. So that's continuation of the existing half-cent, like I said, and that's what's also reflected in the CIP that's currently before you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to move along kind of into the actual the questions before you. And what I have here is this is the resolution, the language that would be put forth on the ballot. This was drafted for discussion by our legal counsel. I will say that legal also ran it by the Board of Election Commissioner to just make sure that the ballot language would pass muster if the body decided to do that. And so as the city manager said, it reflects a sales tax rate of 0.75%. It includes similar language to what was in the ballot before, that it's basically for maintenance and improvements of existing streets. And this is a key fact to hit on. This is for existing streets. This would not be, if there wasn't a street there before, for us to go and build a new street. It is only tied to existing streets. And then what I would say, what's the two new pieces to it from the language back in 2009 is, one, we basically added language that would say it would allow for widening of existing streets. It would also allow for us to include adding things to existing streets, such as gutters, curbs, or sidewalks, and street lighting. And then coming to Councilman Jensen's point, it would allow the flexibility for other associated infrastructure. So if we had underground infrastructure that we needed to address, storm sewers, utilities, there would be more flexibility within this language. And so with that, I wanted to kind of get into some discussion questions, because I think this is, we want to talk about what's the purpose of this sales tax. And so this is, I want to walk through these from discussion questions. But the first one we came up with is, what does the body see the goals of this sales tax to provide funds for? And we kind of came up with three items. The first, what we continue to hear, is the goal to improve pavement conditions. Or is it basically to improve our pavement conditions and renew existing curb, gutter, alley, sidewalks, and street lighting? So that 1 and 2 is kind of consistent with what we're doing today. But then we asked that third element, based on discussion from this body, do you want to do basically 1 and 2, but have the flexibility to pay for additional improvements that may not be there today, or pay for other associated infrastructure costs when we get into these reconstruction projects? And I'll just kind of give you an interesting example. The bikeways plan that we had puts down pavement markings on our streets. And under the current language of the sales tax, we couldn't add pavement markings to existing streets with sales tax funding because they weren't there to begin with. And so I think it's important that if the goal of this is that we focus on streets, that we have clarity on that, but if there's a desire with the body to do something else, we have clarity on that as well. So I'll stop.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. P, because I have Councilman Lesser making the signal that he has a question.
Sure.
Thank you, Dr. Peak. And I'm glad you said that, or bring the question up in regards to is our focus the streets, or is it not the streets in regards to the sales tax? Tell me what, in looking at the new language here that you were just going over, tell me what maintenance is.
So maintenance are things that we do to streets, such as crack sealing, it would be patching of streets. I mean, the things that we do to a street to keep it in a serviceable condition.
Would snow removal be maintenance?
Under our current definition, yes.
That's, in going through the CIP, one of the things that I noticed in looking at that really bothers me, because it wasn't that long ago when I was actually going to the polls and voting for this. And I would have been aghast if I knew in 15, 16, or 17 that what I thought was to improve our streets was in 2015, $318,000 in gutter and curbs project and $867 in snow removal. So moving forward, is that something that you need direction from us as a council on whether or not we want to include snow removal in this program, or as it is, would it moving forward actually be part of it?
What I'd say, that's part of the discussion we're having tonight, is to kind of get a sense of priority from the council on what that direction is. So I mean, that's what we're looking for input on.
Okay.
City
One
manager?
thing, and Doug just mentioned it to me, is that a previous council gave us that direction relative to the utilization of these funds for snow removal. So your answer is direction? Yes, that would be something that this now sitting governing body would need to provide to us if there is a change, because we're going on the decision that was made on the previous governing body, and so that's what we use until a decision is made otherwise.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you. I want to talk about maintenance. Does maintenance include potholes?
Yes.
Does maintenance include potholes?
Yes.
One more time. Does maintenance include potholes?
Yes, ma'am.
Because we had a city manager said that that does not include potholes, and we could not use any of that money. And residents were very, very upset. Very upset.
So it does include potholes. That's part of our strategy. But what I will tell you is a lot of the work that we do in the winter time to service potholes does nothing to improve the overall pavement condition.
It wasn't wintertime.
Yes.
It wasn't wintertime. It was time that we filled potholes. And when we bought that and we argued about, I'll find an email. Trust me, I got some emails. Ask Brett if I can come up with some old emails, but I got an email. It was long before anybody's time, but that's been a question, because everybody was under the understanding that that is part of maintenance on our streets.
It's part of our core business function.
Okay, thank you. Glad to hear that. Existing. So it looks like you covered me in number 3, maybe?
So the word existing is actually in that statement number 1, and that was our just keeping consistent to make sure that everybody understood these funds are used for the existing streets within the city, and that we would not be using the funds to build new streets.
Right. One of the things in the last one I asked, if there was a street, oh boy, I forgot my notes here. If there was a street, because we got some gravel streets, does that include gravel streets? Is that an existing street?
That is an existing street.
Say it to me again. I need it 3 times, Jason, because you know what? I need to hear this.
Okay.
I need it on record.
It's an existing street, but what I would say to you.
So can this taxpayer money be used to fix that street?
For existing streets and that existing condition, if we go by number 1, it's a gravel street. And so it could be used to maintain that in a gravel condition.
Will it ever be used to put it in concrete then? If you know, because.
Not out of the, I mean, and that's part of kind of getting to understanding what the goals of the council are for these funds, because if our goal is to improve the overall pavement condition, that means we're taking those streets, those existing streets and we're doing maintenance, the crack sealing, the surface sealing, the patching of pothole high severity areas, replacing of concrete panels. We're doing reconstruction and rehab of existing pavements, asphalt and concrete. That's what moves the pavement goal. But turning a gravel street to a new asphalt street doesn't change that overall pavement condition.
Okay. Because the problem that some of the constituents have is we all pay taxes, but I still have a gravel street. We all pay taxes the same amount, but I still don't have curbs or gutters or sidewalks. You know, and that was the big thing I voted against it before, was because of that word existing. And when we went in on 21st Street, we didn't have a sidewalk there, but we did, because how it was explained to me was, it has to be, if we use these monies, it has to be put back the same way we found it. So when we do it and there's no sidewalk, then guess what? You're not gonna get a sidewalk. And that's just senseless to me. And, you know, because we wanted to take all the kids off of 21st Street and put them on the sidewalk as opposed to the corner with no curb or gutter because of the big ditches. So that's what my constituents are looking at when they look at this, and that's the questions that I've been getting, is the same questions before. Because they pay into this tax base, but they don't always get to draw off of it.
Yes, City Manager.
And Councilwoman Ortiz, that's what we're looking at when we look at number 2. Because we're talking about if we want to widen an existing street, including the addition of cutters, curbs, sidewalks, things that don't exist. That's why we want to have this discussion, is does that need to be added to our language? So that then gives the flexibility to Dr. Peak to be able to make a decision as he's doing a design. Now, one of the things that Deputy Manager Gerber is going to look for is going back to the ruling related to the gravel street and making a determination. But that is something where you could potentially, if that is something that's critical to the council, to be able to take and look at any gravel street being updated, you would need to look at the language that's there in order to make a determination that that's something that you want to do. However, as mentioned, is that our main purpose is trying to improve the streets that we have when we do this, and so I think that's one of the things that we've looked at when we crafted this language. So if council would want to go a different direction relative to being able to improve the existing condition, then that would be something we need to look at. Do you have any additional comment related to that?
I would really like that because, and I think maybe Mr. Henderson, he might have some of the same issues that I have, but, you know, we all pay into this tax entity, but we still have gravel streets. You know, and I was told yes before, even though existing cut out a lot of stuff, you know, well, we're just gonna put the same street that you had, you know, that's all we're gonna do. And so my constituents are not in favor of it if it's not going to make it better.
Can I make just one comment? And so I think this is why we're wanting to have this discussion with you. And it's real important for us to understand what your goals and your directions of what you use this funding, want us to use the funding for. Because like I said, I mean, we can talk about paving gravel roads. We can talk about adding sidewalk, curb, and gutter. But 10 years from now, if we're talking about what our pavement condition is, that's why I started this discussion with talking about how much money is needed to truly affect the pavement. I mean, we've had this internal discussion. One of the benefits of that existing language is it kept us pretty tight in line and focused on achieving a goal. And while I know there's an appetite and a desire to expand beyond that, that's why we need input from you guys about what is the focus of this and what's that end goal we're trying to achieve, because the success of that depends on how we define the program.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Honor. So one question and a curveball. So I get a lot of calls from folks that are concerned we're just filling potholes rather than actually repairing the road surface in places. And the comments I usually get back to them are, there's no sense in doing a full depth repair in that particular section if you're just going to rip the road out and replace it. How does that play into this? And then my curveball is, in order to achieve the same effect with a mill levy, what would the mill levy need to be raised to? And if the mill levy or the sales tax are not an option, how many thousands of years will it take us using normal funding to resolve our issue? 3 questions.
Well, I'll start with the pothole question. The answer is it varies, but a lot of times we are just filling a pothole. And especially in winter time, when the asphalt plants are shut down, we use a cold mix that is a throw and go practice. I mean, it's basically we blow out the hole, put the mix in, pack it down, and we're off. And that's a temporary measure. Where we are with the program is we're looking at where does it make the most sense to invest in that full depth patching. Maybe we have a high severity area that we need to address, and it's in advance of an overlay or a mill and overlay, so we're not wasting dollars in doing that. And then the last piece, I'd say there are potholes out there that what we would call are such a high severity that we need an immediate response, and that may be a very temporary repair.
Does this allow us to start moving toward more permanent fixes, though?
So the program orientation, like I said, that's what we're investing in, the preventative maintenance. So we're working on those good streets to prevent potholes from forming, and that's a very important step that we've not been doing. And then the second piece is focusing the rehab and the reconstruction dollars, so it puts us on a path to knock down that backlog and achieve the PCI goal council set. And then your last question on the different funding strategies, we'll have to get back to you with that information, so I'm going to not swing on that curveball and come back to you with more information.
Mayor, I've been informed that it would be roughly 15 to a 16 mill increase in order to have. Each mill represents a little over $1 million in new tax dollars that would be raised.
And without that, our roads will basically never get repaired.
Correct.
So it's a tough question, folks, but at the end of the day, it's going to break down to, do we want to have roads in our children's lifetime or not?
Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Peak, we're given these 3 kind of, I guess, options here. And first of all, having been sometimes on these projects as a contractor, I do see sometimes the straitjacket that having for instance, puts us in. There's been times where, we could go another 20 foot, that, might be a great thing. However, because the funding was this, came from this and that, we can't do it. And so I'm all for eliminating some of those straitjackets that keep us from making, I guess, wise decisions in the field, especially your engineering staff. At the same time, though, that graph you showed us earlier, what we need to do to keep the PCI score, to bend those different curves, that was only under option 1. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's basically funding dedicated towards pavement management, so yes.
So any of these, number 2 or 3, would be more than any of those you gave?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Councilwoman Clear.
I've been here and I've been listening, but this is just for existing streets. This isn't for new.
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
Oh, good, because I was going to fight that. Okay.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you so much. There are so many issues here. I would suggest for those that weren't here at the time, there was so much discussion when the last one was passed. People wanted to narrow it so that we got the miles done and got the streets fixed, as people are still saying today. One of the things that we did do right away, because that was voted in the year I was voted in the first time, so I was on the council as we started to say, okay, how's this really going to work? Was that and it's still in the CIP right now, we added a line item for infill sidewalks so that the money that we had could be used to repair in place the streets and the sidewalks that were already there. Where there was a gap, there was a little money that could be added into the project to fill in a gap in sidewalks. We also added a line item that is still there which was called Complete Streets. It was fairly general, so that if there were some improvements that that made sense in conjunction with that street work, that there was a little bit of money, again, that was more flexible than just sidewalks to add into the project. Frankly, and maybe, could you move back to the slide that you put that had the 3 curves on it? If we allow anything with beyond repairing the streets with this money, just to match dollars and dollars, we will never, ever get that done, right? I mean, there's no way, because there is a lot of pressure to change an existing rock street into a concrete one, or to add curbs and gutters and storm sewers and so on. What the limitation that we had before did was, it wasn't that we couldn't do that, but it pushed that conversation out on the table, so we didn't end up spending all the money on 3 projects, because we could do almost anything, and everybody wants to do that. But to stay on course to achieve at least the top level, but ideally the middle level, and move it along, boy, we can't open it wide up. I would point out, backing up a little bit, that I don't think we've ever done streetlights with that money, and so they wouldn't necessarily have to be there. I would also point out that the reason that the city manager at the time that this went through said no potholes was that was considered day-to-day maintenance, and we do need to. We're at a point where we've made enough progress. As you spoke, I thought maybe we need to define maintain. Maybe the word we want for this is rehabilitate, to separate that from maintenance, because at the time that the first one was passed, the economy was tanking. Our streets were a mess. There were potholes everywhere, and the economy was tanking. We have made some progress. I'm thinking that it might really help us to have a pie chart like that, or one of those thermometers like they use in fundraising campaigns, so that we can have a better sense of the progress we've made. We do talk a lot about what's not done, but we have made some progress. Yet we're already at a point where in the street maintenance program that the staff has proposed for this year, we're doing repaving a street that was only put in 4 years ago to do whatever kind of crack sealing or over sealing, and that, we need to make sure that the idea was we could reduce the number of potholes we needed to do, and we have done that. When we needed to get that crack sealing back into the operating budget, we needed to reduce the number of potholes so they were the exception instead of the rule of what our people needed to do. And so I'm not sure we could or should look at this alone, but instead in terms of what we can accommodate in the operating budget. And I know some of us have been looking at just at the CIP that we have right now. Maybe we need to have a capital street development budget that we've identified for new streets or major expansions to streets that we, because there are some things creeping into the CIP that's proposed right now that are huge when we still haven't done these streets. And so looking at, a policy as we move this forward as to whether we're going to do anything new until we get the darn streets caught up. Or if so, is there a governor on that for us so that we manage our indebtedness and we manage our operating budget? We're at that point where we're looking at all those things again, but for me, we absolutely still have to prioritize getting the existing streets fixed. And that's so much money that even though it's tempting to do extra things, boy, I think we just have to think of that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hiller. I'll just make a few brief comments. I think that what I would like to keep the body marinating on tonight as we go through this is understanding what the needs are. I know that Dr. Peak presented some language, but I don't think that right now would be the meeting for us to start hashing out policy on the fly, because as you all know, that's not something that we would ever want to start doing. I'm a huge advocate against us going ahead and starting to write policy on the fly. I think that the real question that we have in front of us is allowing Dr. Peak to go through the presentation and us starting to take note of what the real need is in our community. I think that one of the things that we are not talking about here is the impact that that decrease in maintenance and repairs is going to do positively to our budget in the end in 10 years. Because the amount of money that we are expending right now, which is horrendous, in having to go and redig a street that we have just completed because now we're working on the main because we were not able to tackle it, or because we have not been able to maintain it in a while and we're trying to play catch up, is significant. And if, as we're looking at, like Councilwoman Hiller constantly talks about, how do we do this in such a way that we are not adding to our burden of bonding significantly, because we're having a regular stream of funds that we're going to have allocated to some of these projects? These are a lot of things for us to consider. It has been impressive to me that as I've talked to people in the community, and I've talked about the difference between a 1/2 cent and a 3/4 cent tax, that I really appreciate the staff being extremely transparent and talking about this in the open so that we could really take a look at why this would be important. People are so receptive because people are fed up with the street situation. And what I keep on hearing when I talk to residents in neighborhoods is, look, here we have this great street. You guys just went ahead and paved. There was no fixing of the ditches, there was no curbs, there was no sidewalk added, and that's what I wanted. You guys didn't do this job. And I think that as we're trying to consider how do we really take care of the needs of our constituents and give them the product that they've been asking for, rather than focusing on the policy, I think that today maybe we should focus on just listening in to what the numbers really are and the needs, and how we can accomplish that master plan that is already developed, because that's the PCI plan. We do have that plan in place.
Well, the PCI is just the maintenance of the existing streets, right?
So it's a goal of what, you could think of terms and level of service of what do you want your overall system street condition to be. I mean, we could set a PCI of 50, you could set a higher PCI, the aspirational goal is 70, but that's kind of the policy goal that you guys have set for us in reducing that pavement backlog and getting more of our streets to an acceptable condition. It doesn't mean all streets will be fixed, but we'll be reducing that backlog value.
But just to clarify though, PCI is a pavement surface, it's a pavement quality standard. It's not all the amenities like curb and gutter or how wide it is or anything like that.
I just want to make sure I'm clear in what I'm telling you. So the $24.4 million that we talk about assumes that the existing citywide continues in its existing form. So there's a portion of that that's allocated to curb and gutter, a portion allocated to alleys, a portion allocated to sidewalks, but it's about 11.7 million out of that 14 million that gets allocated to pavement management. And that's what's assumed with that $1 million gap, is that we continue to do those other programs with the citywide retailer sales tax. The 24 million is what's needed to improve our pavement condition, but it represents a combination of all these different funding sources. 52% of that 24 million comes out of the citywide retailer sales tax.
But just to clarify that when you're talking about that PCI goal and these dollars going to that PCI goal, it's just to fix the pavement that exists today?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So just maybe a better way for me to talk about this, we've got some other things talking about ballot language, but I really think, from staff standpoint, we've got kind of 5 questions to ask you. The first one was talking about what's the purpose of this citywide retailers sales tax, and we kind of gave you some options on that. The second is once you define that purpose, giving staff direction about how we prioritize, in reaching that goal. The third piece then is you tell us, purpose and priority, crafting ballot language, because I think this is important to talk about. The ballot language has to be understandable to what the voters are voting on, and so it has to be very clear. And that's why I talked about the attorneys have gone through the election commission. And then ultimately, as you talk about purpose, priority, and the ballot language, is that rate going from a half cent to 3/4 cent, is that acceptable? So I think those are kind of the four policy questions that we're trying to present to you for discussion. And of course, we realize that you're not here to make any decisions or go in one direction, but what additional information do you need from staff to help you make a decision?
Councilwoman Claire.
Just for grins, what would 1%, how much more would that give us?
So the half cent generates about 14 million. So I mean, if you just multiply that 2, it'd be 28. But assume
And what will 75?
So roughly 31 million annually. I'm sorry, 21.
Okay.
Yes.
So about 7 million more.
Yes,
So it'd be 28 million if it was the whole Senate.
Councilman May.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Dr. Peak. I've got a couple of questions here. First off, I wanted to know, are any of our existing bonds contingent on this revenue still coming in from the sales tax?
Madam Mayor and Councilman, the bonds that we have existing are paid through our debt service fund, which has a dedicated mill levy towards it.
Okay.
So that helps pay off those bonds.
Good. Just trying to figure out how all this works.
When he made.
Councilwoman Mays, would you entertain her?
Yeah, that's fine.
We used cash for all of these projects, so there were no projects bonded that therefore there would be lingering debt.
That's great. I was actually going to get to that, so I'm glad that
That's why.
you saw that. Now, in terms of the timing of the ballot question, I know we talked about a November ballot. There's going to be a lot of things on the ballot this November. It's going to be a really long ballot. So they'll have all the House races, the statewide races, Congress. If, for some reason, we ask for a 3/4 cent sales tax and it doesn't pass, are we going to be able to try again in April? Or is this, I mean, do we get 2 bites at the apple if for some reason the voters say no?
Yes, the intent we have is that since we do have the general election, we can go on to that ballot. It saves us a considerable amount of money. But if we were unsuccessful at that location, we could consider a special, or you could look at the primary that would occur again, and/or then the next general election in November of 2019. Our actual true collection will end at the end of September, so we would stop being able to collect at the end of September if we were not approved if the voters didn't approve it prior to November of 19. Or the end of September of 19.
Okay, and my last question, would it be possible if we were to, and I don't know, perhaps everybody hates this idea, but would it be possible to split it into 2 questions and do a renewal of the half-cent sales tax for existing maintenance of our existing streets, and then the 1/4 cent for the modernization of, curbs and gutters and all of that?
Councilmember, one of the things that we've been looking at is in order to keep the ballot simple. And the issue that we have is if you have 2 separate issues, first of all, getting them in the situation where they would be acceptable to the Commissioner of Elections relative to a vote. But then it would be potentially choosing between the half cent and the 3/4 cent and whether or not we would get a consensus relative to that. It just makes it more confusing on the ballot. We feel that we need to select which one we feel the need right now is for the 3/4 cent, and so that's what we would be looking at. That's what we're considering the right recommendation at this time. But we would not, I think, want to have 2 separate ballot issues.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm a little alarmed sometimes when I hear, about raising the percent of tax, perhaps at all from the half. And I think we need to keep in mind that, economics says that, demand is not inelastic. If we start raising taxes, there will be a point at people consume less. So we can't really say that a half cent will bring in, 17 million and 3/4 will bring in 21 million, because there's going to be a point at which people don't consume as much. I mean, I am very much in favor of extending this tax, but I'm also very troubled. I mean, you guys are sick of me saying this, but, I have 4 kids, and I know, like, Doug has 6 kids. And Mr. Gerber has 6 kids, but, I go out to eat, and it's $30, but then it's almost $40 by the time I pay for the meal. And that's if you don't go to a place that has a, that was probably not an accurate example. But I guess my point is that I just really feel like we're maybe getting to a point where people are taxed out. I remember it used to be 5.25% for a long time in Topeka, and now we're getting close to 10%. I know a lot of that's the state, a lot of that's not us, but I guess I just want to keep that in mind. And the other thing is, there's also a capacity issue, both from staff and contractors. If, my experience is, if you had $100 million you could spend every year for the next 3 years, you couldn't do it, because we don't have the capacity either as staff or contractors. And you start introducing inflation at that point too, in bidding, frankly. It's good for contractors, but bad for taxpayers. So I guess that's, going forward, that's just a couple of things I'd ask that we maybe think about. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Just a point of clarification, I'm not sure that Councilman May's suggestion was understood exactly. I think you were suggesting that there be the half cent for maintenance and then a separate optional quarter-cent for modernization. We checked with legal, but I think that the state law, if we were to consider that, only allows half cent. There's a minimum of a half cent on any ballot for a sales tax issue. I'm looking down here, but I think, do you know? Okay, I think it is. It's come up before.
Increments. 0.1 increments.
Yeah, that's what's allowed.
Any other questions, or would you like Dr. Peak to resume with his presentation? Dr. Peak?
So this is the last slide, and like I said, I think what we're looking for is what additional information do we need to bring back to you to kind of continue this discussion. To get it on the November ballot, we would need a decision from the governing body by the last meeting in July to be able to make notice to the Board of Election, to commissioners to submit and get on that ballot. So, I mean, that's kind of the time frame we're dealing with. We wanted to start the discussion early as we're talking about CIP and moving into operating budget discussion. So just really looking for feedback. What additional information do we need to provide you to continue the discussion at this point?
Thank you, Dr. Peak. We do have 2 individuals signed up to speak for public comment tonight. The first one is Ms. Marge Aarons, followed by Mr. Clark Trammell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm Marge Aarons, and I'm speaking for myself this evening. I'm a 35-year resident of the City of Topeka. I appreciate the movement of our City Council towards transparency and the proposal to carefully analyze the costs and benefits of tax incentives for businesses and developments through the proposed tax increment financing policy. I salute your respect for long-range planning, because to the degree we plan is the degree to which we economize in our building of a better community. I ask that you go further in your tax evaluations and policy analysis tonight. We have a vast number of poor residents for whom their very health, safety, housing, and survival are directly affected by sales taxes. And that was even alluded to maybe this morning's or yesterday morning's paper by the doctor in charge of our health department, that to the degree that we continue the separation of those economic separation of people within our community is the degree to which those on the lower stratus really cannot survive. City residents represent 71% of those living in the entire county. The city and its governments and business are the source of income for nearly all the county residents. You cannot separate the economics of the city and county one from another, though government structures persist in doing so. Likewise, the countywide sales tax, bringing in $5 million a year, or nearly 5/6 of the Chamber of Commerce's budget, cannot be separated from the very real infrastructure needs of the community it promotes. The only way to figure ourselves through the financing of infrastructure is by opening up the data on how those bodies operating with our taxes spend their money. Shawnee County has graciously prepared a data sheet reporting that 10 large businesses in our community who may receive the state maximum of 10 years of tax exemptions take $8 million this year from our Shawnee County tax base alone. That's property tax. We do not know what strings of increasing jobs and wages are attached to those exemptions. That information has sort of been lost in the process. Most of them also receive sales tax exemptions, but I can't find the data online, and the phone at the Department of Revenue is busy right now. Go Topeka hands out business incentives as well and runs its operation on public money too. There's no such sales tax exemption or incentive for the poor, for food, clothing, housing, or services. I believe that we should not add to their burden and that we should find ways to reduce it instead. In Kansas, sales taxes represent approximately 11% of the income of the poorest people, and only 3.6% of those earning at the top 1%. That's a difference of incomes at $18,000 a year versus $419,000 a year. I ask that you get precise. Find out if I am correct. Look at all the existing local tax revenues, exemptions, and incentives to find the essential amount you need for infrastructure. Pressure the county to be more efficient as some officials and business interests lobby to disrupt countywide comprehensive planning that can save public costs for development up to 38% for essential services. Ask Go Topeka to make public their use of sales tax dollars in expenditures for rent, travel, and salaries. Proudly protect the poor in all you do. Thank you so much for letting me speak tonight.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Mr. Clark Trammell.
Well, good evening again, and this is why I really showed up this evening. I'd like to point out Carol Marple is also on your list, I believe.
She signed up for public comment.
Yeah, just so you know. Oh, excuse me, okay. Joe Ledbetter was to be here, but he couldn't, and if you haven't read your emails, he sent you all an email in reference to the subject, and I support what Joe has said in my own way that I would have expressed it to you. I'm going to share with you from a business perspective, and I'm not going to say anything I hope that it isn't intended to offend anybody, but it's just business. This is a big subject, and underneath the topic are a lot of moving parts that you need to really take a look at. Do we need more money, or do we need better efficiency within the staff and the contracting and the services and the management and the organizational structure overseeing the work that the city does? It is believed that there is money that can be made by better efficiency within the operations and bidding. Be aware of that. A couple of other things I'm going to share with you in doing my due diligence is, remember, staff recommends, you all approve. So you need to know as much as staff does, in my opinion, as a business person, to make decisions like this, not just willy-nilly. Sounds good, I believe what you said, because staff may not be correct, or they may not know everything that you know to help them make a good recommendation. I've been doing a tally for a long time with small business, And the small business people I talk to and that I have worked with, quote unquote, we are taxed out. And that goes right along with you, Mr. Emerson, what you said. They are. Think of what we pay for taxes. We have 1,000 jobs open, and it could be that it's so expensive to live here because of food and the cost of living due to taxation that I don't come here. That is something. All of this is connected. Everything in this city is connected in the hip. If we raise taxes, then profit margins go down because you're only going to be able to sell that product at a certain price or it's not going to move. If my profit margin goes down, I'm not able to do the things I need to do to grow my business. And it's imperative to think about how we're spending our money and the taxation involved with that. For instance, you stay in a motel room or a hotel room here in Topeka, you pay an additional 18% on top of that motel bill. 18%. I know people in the industry, and I've owned hotels and motels. Our occupancy rate is, on average, less than 50%, except when we have big shows. People are now going to other communities around Topeka that they don't pay 18% on top of what they consider reasonable and unreasonable room rate. We have tax areas in this community that you all are aware of that you approved where the owner of a business can charge another dollar or a little something extra. So by the time we add our tax, and then we add all these other incentives, we're taxing ourselves out of reality. And that's just plain business. So how do you do it? Do you raise the bridge or do you lower the river? Maybe what we need to do is look at the efficiency of operations and make sure we're getting the full capacity out of what we're doing, that we're bidding effectively. The lowest bid isn't necessarily the best contract. It could be the more expensive bid because the amortization of that is 10 years rather than 5 years of utilization. Beyond that, it's important that we put all these pieces together in this decision, and I hope that you all elect and step out into your NIAs and into the community to further this conversation, because this is something that's extremely important, obviously, to all of us. The last thing I'll say, and it was alluded to earlier, I think you need to make it really clear that this has nothing to do with economic development tax, that we're talking about two different taxes, because that's confusing. I hear the retail tax and I think that's economic development. Why are we raising that? People need to really be clear on what this tax is and why. You got a big job in front of you. If I can help you in any way, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trammell. Does the body have any other comments? I know that this is just a really big item to start, processing. We can and will come back to have further discussion on this item. But I just wanted to make sure that if there's anything else that you guys want to run by Dr. Peak. All right. Seeing none, we now proceed to the announcements. We start with the preliminary agenda, if the clerk would read.
We have two proclamations, no presentations. For the consent agenda, we have an ordinance for expenditures for March 3rd through the 30th. We have 4 resolutions for approving special events. We have 4 resolutions granting noise exceptions. Under action items, we have an ordinance for a property located at 2705 Northwest Topeka Boulevard. We have an ordinance approving the Quinton Heights Steel Neighborhood Plan. We have a resolution authorizing the 2019 through 2028 Capital Improvement Plan and 2019 through 2021 Capital Improvement Budget. A resolution for the Capital Improvement Plan revenue bonds for enterprise fund projects. And for non-action items, we have a discussion on the findings of the city's 2017 neighborhood health update.
City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. The most important announcement that I have is to remind people that April 24th at 6 p.m. at the Law Enforcement Center, we will have a budget public input event. It'll be a council meeting. Council members will be there to be able to hear input from the public regarding the budget. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to congratulate the young ladies that won the Youth of the Year for the Boys and Girls Club. I was able to participate in their day of their event, and I promised the winner of the Youth of the Year that I would have dinner with them at the top of the tower. And for my surprise, it was not one, but it was two young ladies. And we had a wonderful time at the restaurant, had a great conversation. None of them were from Topeka. One of them was from Lawrence, the other one was from Manhattan. And both of them were very appreciative of our community, loved everything that we had going on, loved the view. So they were very excited. We had a great event. You heard a little bit of it with the opera for Art as a Form of Activism. Just one of the many events that are happening in our community. And the last thing that I will say is to all of those celebrating Passover, shalom to all of you. And in addition to that, I had the opportunity to participate yesterday in a Holocaust remembrance event that happened at the Ramada. There was a young lady that spoke of the history and the story of her grandmother and how her grandmother and her grandfather escaped the Holocaust and their story in the concentration camps and everything. And what I found the most moving was the fact that she said something very powerful. There was a whole bunch of kids from all of the schools that were doing different events, and she said, "You're our hope." And we speak about this and we remember this because we are to remember that sometimes our hearts are misled to do the wrong things. Evil is prevalent and it can happen. However, we repeat these stories so that you all have hope because you're our future. So may we never forget the 6 million that perished, and that we always remember that he who was silenced in the face of evil is contributing. So thank you very much. Councilman Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. Wanted to give you guys an update on the St. Jude home. If you guys didn't know, it's actually almost done. I was inside it this last week and was able to talk to the news there. They had reported that a third of the tickets have already been sold. So if you guys are planning on getting in the raffle, you better do it. I did. We got in, and we have our ticket. I have still an issue with Cox Cable Utility running the cable across the lawn, and I know they're supposed to bury it, and they're not getting the hint that they need to bury it, and I'd like to get that figured out. Now that the CIP is out, I've been getting a lot of comments on that, and most of them are 17th Street's not going to last 3 more years. And it's from McVicker, I think, west all the way to the Turnpike, or the I-470. And I'd like to also see that Huntoon project, Huntoon from Gage to downtown, figure out how to move that up. It's 6 years out right now. And that would be a really nice road to have for us Westerners heading to downtown. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Councilman Lesser. Councilwoman Hiller.
Just some kudos, actually, and an announcement. Got a chance to go to the police graduation last week, and that was, as ever, very impressive. We've got 6 very impressive officers coming on. And my understanding is that there is a new class already that has 16, 15. And so that was really exciting. I wanted to, speaking of the police department, put out thanks to the department, particular Officer Alex Wall. We did have our District 1 Crime Summit at Topeka High on Saturday. We had 52 bona fide neighborhood residents, as well as the police and the speakers, and it went really, really well, and appreciate all the all of the prep, and we will be doing some follow-up as well for report out and back to the neighborhoods. Wanted to remind everybody that despite the weather, Tulips at Twilight did start on time on the 6th of April. It runs to the 15th. And at this point, it's a little warmer at night. From 6 to 10 p.m. is when the tulips at twilight go on. And at least in my yard, the very first tulip bloomed today. So the delayed real tulip times are coming as well. And last but not least, I continue to be involved in the Aaron Douglas Art Fair. And the call for artists cards are out, and I have some if anybody wants one. But The art fair is now going into its 13th year and is particularly geared toward diverse and emerging artists. So it's the first time opportunity for somebody who maybe has had their stuff in the garage or the basement and the family knows about it, but they've not displayed and sold that artwork. And so if people know of those diverse and emerging artists, it's a wonderful one-day fair, it's inexpensive, and has been life-changing for a lot of artists of all ages from Topeka that came to a fair for the first time. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Clear.
I just want to say I got a chance to tour the Topeka Workforce Center today and talk with some management over there. I am so impressed. I have lived in this community my whole life, and I remember I haven't been in there since the 80s, and it's changed. And I was really impressed. So if you're in need of employment, I would suggest you check them out.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say there's still plenty of time to get your free smoke detectors. Time is not running out. I did, I know you're hearing me, but I just need you to move a little forward. Councilman Mays came and he had to let me know that he was in good shape, but he did give me a name and he did give me a house number, and I appreciate that. But time is not running out. So please get your smoke detectors. Am I correct, Chief?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilman Emerson.
Yes, I don't know who, but someone left these I love, Thunderbird, Shawnee Heights, a couple buttons for me, so I have one on. This is tough for a guy who graduated from Highland Park. But two of my kids have already went through, and I have a senior at Shawnee Heights, and it was actually a track meet at Washburn Rural right before this. So Shawnee Heights is a fantastic school, and about half of my district, so that's great. And I believe one of my constituents is going to be coming up and talking, so I'm going to be quiet now to make it quicker.
Councilman Padilla.
Thank you, Mayor. Just following up on Councilman Hiller's comments about the Topeka Police Recruit Academy graduation, I want to thank you, Chief, for inviting us to attend, and thank my fellow council members who were able to make it. It was a really excellent event, so thank you again for that. I want to mention a firefighter by name, Jacob Torres. Chief, he was presented with an award for character by the Safe Streets for intervening in an event that probably saved someone's life, a heart issue that occurred. And I also want to apologize for not mentioning something last week about Mayor de la Isla. She's been with us, an organization called Mana de Topeka now for some time, and that organization has for 10 years now hosted a youth program called the Hermanitas program. And Mayor de la Isla, as well as her partner, Dr. Kim Morris, have been the lead presenters on that program. And again, this last March, they had 97, I think, applicants and participants in that program. We also had a visitor from Washington, D.C., who is the director of Mana National, and she was quite impressed with what she saw. And it's been a collaboration with Washburn University, something that we hope that will continue. And I want to offer my thanks to Mayor de la Isla and Professor Dr. Morse for their continued participation and presentation of that program. And thank you very much, Mayor. That's all.
Councilman Jensen. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was excited to see in my new yard, I had several tulips pop up late last week, as well as some dandelions, and I was dismayed to notice that the dandelions are doing just fine through this cold weather, but my tulips, on the other hand, need a little bit of work, so that's on my to-do list. I don't know about you, Mayor, but I have been getting inundated with invitations to ribbon cuttings and openings and all sorts of things that are sort of planned out for the next couple of months. And I just think that is so exciting as we come into spring to see all of the things that are going to happen in the next couple of months. I mean, this is really shaping up to be just a fantastic year for Topeka. And I just want to encourage everybody, if you get a chance to go to some of these, please do. This, this 1 hour or maybe 2 hour event generally is the capstone for hundreds of hours of work that groups put into things. Just to launch their idea into this community. And I'm just honored that I get to help support them in that one moment in time. But there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline for this spring and summer, and I just can't wait to see it all come to fruition. Have a great week, everybody.
Councilman Mays? Seeing no comments, we now proceed to the public comments section. Oh, Mr. Lesser.
I do have an announcement. It did remind me, I also did attend the graduation at the police academy, and really, really well done. And the speaker was Councilman Padilla, and as painful as it is to say, he did a very excellent job. He really did. He was had a very good message to the recruits, and Chief, it was a really great event, and Topeka Civic Theater, another gym we have, did a wonderful job in hosting it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we now proceed to the public comment. Mr. Willard Steinkooler, thank you so much for waiting.
Being early is on time. Being on time is late. I use that as a kind of guiding principle, and I thank you and appreciate your attention. I'm honored to be able to address you, and as you know, Mayor, diversity is the genius of democracy. This is about dog licensing, and I have all of the data to support my position here. And I just want to share this with you because I would like to be quick, be complete, and be gone. So I will start from the beginning. On February the 19th of 2018, I sent an $8 check to the animal control for licensing our little dachshund for a year. Went to the Topeka Animal Licensing. And the license that, the little dachshund's name is Wolf, although he's really a gentle fellow. The license expired March the 31st of 2018. Because of a very serious illness, Wolf was euthanized on March the 23rd, 7 or 8 days before his license expired. My check cleared, and I called the petdata.com, and they assured me that there was no way that I could recover my $8. And it's really more of a principle that perhaps there is an administrative overlaps, an administrative incompletion, something that would allow a pet owner to recover the fee, or to at least notify the people that once the money is sent, there is no method or way for that to be recovered. So really, I will end up, unless you help me in some way, we'll be licensing Wolf next year, although he's dead. We had him for 15 years, and I have the euthanasia certificate. I have a copy of the check, which I sent to the Topeka Animal Licensing on February the 19th. I have the Potwin Pet Clinic data to indicate that the new euthanasia cost $56 and the cremation $115, etc. So it's really I just like to see if maybe there would be a way in which this could be corrected in some way, that basically you wouldn't think the city of Topeka would be licensing dead dogs. So that's where I'm coming from on this. And my action has been, I've called, like I said, this petdata.com in Irving, Texas, and everyone's been very helpful. Mike Anderson there said, Willard, there's nothing we can do for you. And I called animal control here in Topeka. Again, we have no policy for refunding any expense, any money. And I called the city of Topeka, and so I have received the usual sort of, I'm sorry, there's no way that we can recover this, you know. So that's all I have to say, except this is the fellow. Like I said, he's really a pretty gentle guy. Only weighed 18 pounds. But my wife will not want me to come home without that. Does anyone here have a question for me?
Yes.
Mr. Steinkuhler, I did get your message earlier today. I'm your council representative, and we don't normally talk back during public comment, but I did speak to your wife. I will tell you, sometimes I think in trying to be efficient, we set up processes that probably on the surface look like they're a good idea, and it has some unintended consequences. So I'm really sorry for your loss, and if the city can't, we'll get that refunded from my own pocket for
Well,
you.
it's more of a administrative case here, because everyone is telling me very helpfully that I'm sorry, Willard, there's just no mechanism whereby the city of Topeka would license a dog that's already dead.
Absolutely.
And for me, being early is on time. I sent the check in February 19th.
Sure.
And being on time is late.
Well, Mr. Steinkuhler, again, this is part of the beauty of the discussion that we had earlier. There's already individuals in the back standing up waiting to speak with you, and city manager has made the signal to me of, we're going to work on this. So I would ask you to, we only have one more person signed up for public comment. So if you don't mind giving us a few minutes, and then city manager will address you personally.
Thank you for your help.
Madam Mayor.
And Councilwoman Ortiz.
I want the public to know that they're back there taking up a collection for you. No, I really do, because people are going to look at, no, we made a mistake and we're going to make it right. And if you guys don't have enough, I'll even put in. But the public needs to know that. This gentleman has come, we've made an error, he's brought it to our attention. I apologize for Wolf. I mean, my sympathies go out to you, and they're going to make it right. And if we don't have enough, let me know, because I got some change as well. Thank you for bringing that to us. You're right.
You know, it's not the money, it's the process that needs to be considered.
And we got that message, but we want you to get the message that we got it, and we want to reimburse your money.
Thank you for your help.
Next person signed up to, thank you.
That's it?
Yes, if you would like to, city manager will approach you in a second. The next person signed up to speak is Ms. Carl Marple.
Thank you very much. I goofed. I've attended way too many JADO meetings that you cannot have public comment during discussions. I haven't been to many city meetings lately. And since it wasn't an action item, I figured my best bet was to make a public comment. So I would like you to think back, and I would like to make a few comments about the proposed sales tax. And I am and can learn. First of all, I wanted to say I cannot vote on this tax. I do own a house in town, but I will certainly be paying this tax. So my comments are, and I really would like to thank Councilman Emerson for talking about how this affects people, and Mr. Trammell and Marge Arns, because I didn't hear that discussion. And if you think back to the Quinton Heights discussion, you know, the average wage is $40,000 a year. A half cent makes a big difference. And to discuss about increasing the mill levy, I don't know about any of you folks here, but my taxes all went up. And the last thing I want to see is the mill levy go up more. So I think you really have to think about that. You know, it sounds really fine to say 0.25%, But that takes a big bite out of a lot of people's income. And when you have no other way to augment your income or supplement your income, it does make a difference. I also want to say that, and I'll mention it because I think 21st and Wanamaker was a fiasco. I travel that a lot. And I have a hard time saying that I would want to vote for a sales tax to improve roads when I see that, how long was that road closed? How long were these merchants inconvenienced and the public? And then we no sooner get it done and we're tearing it up and spending more money? There's got to be some guidelines on this. I also want to say that I have never thought that throwing money onto a problem solves it. I think we need to get more efficient with what we have. And so those are just my comments. I appreciate being able to speak. I always learn something, and thank you very much. I didn't mind waiting.
Having no other items in front of the body and there's no executive session, this meeting is adjourned.
Nice job.